flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. That's here.
Chair.
Mark Serborough.
President.
Ron Vaughn.
Present.
Rickenbacker.
Here.
We were taking care of very important, and I may need to take a phone call at
Okay.
some point.
Any additions or corrections to the agenda, guys? Public comments, item 2. Any public comment in the room on agenda items? Any public comment on the phone related to agenda items? Item 3, fiscal year 2023 budget discussion, A, administrator review.
Walk through what we've got here. You had a folder on the iPads that was marked FY23 budget. But what I did this morning was take all the files that were in that folder, put them in the current meeting folder. And I have one marked specifically for today's date as well. So there, it's the same documents and just put in 3 different places so we can all find them, wherever. I did want to start by walking through the position allocation list because our largest expense throughout all our budgets, obviously, is our personnel. It's not atypical for municipality to have that be the case. What you have with the way the spreadsheet works is each department is listed and each position listed by title. You'll see if it's a full-time or a part-time. Now, generally the part-time, they're just listed as part-time unless we have a specified number of hours. So we have, let's just jump down, for instance, in the clerk's office, we have a part-time position. We know at 25 hours a week, 1,300 hours through the year. So that one's listed, and it's listed even in the worksheets that I use as a specific position. This differs from a position that's listed as part-time, for instance, with the corrections over at the jail. There are a number of part-time employees that are pulled from time to time for transport or maybe to fill a shift or whatever, but they're not regular part-timers. So I don't put a number of hours in there. What we do is we budgeted an amount of money, and that's what's in the budget for the part-timers. So that's the difference between the 2 different classes. In the hours, in those columns, you'll see the annual, obviously, number of hours, and then the work week. I want to go through a few of these because particularly in this building, in the county building, in our general offices, we're by and large on a 35-hour work week, unless the board says differently. So we'll go through and I'll highlight the ones that are different, just for purposes of highlighting them. And if you want to change them or reconsider, this is the time to start talking about that. The exempt, this is whether the position is salaried or hourly. So if it's exempt, in effect, it's a salary position or an elected official. If it's non-exempt, it's an hourly position subject to overtime rules. Overtime begins at 40 hours, even though we may have a 35-hour work week. Any hour between 35 and 40 is the straight time, but beyond 40 would be the time and a half. The affiliation, if you're elected, if you're union, the union is listed there. The MC, that would be our managerial confidential group, in other words, non-union group. And then finally, if there's a pay grade assigned, you see that pay grade there. So this is the foundation for all of the wage and benefit calculations that you'll see throughout the budget, consistent among all departments. Now, scrolling through, the first 40-hour position that you see is in the treasurer's office. Right now, the chief deputy county treasurer is at a 40-hour work week. You see there's a part-time deputy treasurer there at 28. This is different than obviously the norm for the hourly worker, but this has actually been the case for a number of years now. So it's just assumed to continue unless the board says otherwise. Next one is down in building and grounds. Our custodian maintenance supervisor has been on a 40-hour work week for apparently some time. So that's just proposed to continue here. In the prosecuting attorney cooperative reimbursement, see a couple of them that 4.9 hours per week, 6.5. These are just the way they've calculated the grant for the cooperative reimbursement program. That's a portion of the prosecutor's hours and a portion of the assistant prosecutors' hours. So they, just end up with the salaries that they're at. We just split it up in a couple different places. Same is true with the probate court administrator. Sheriff's office, even though we list the sheriff and the undersheriff at 35, they're commonly 40s. So you'll see those 40s consistent throughout. Animal control officers at 25 hours. I want to talk about that one in planning in Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. That's actually what you see in Planning Commission and the ZBA. That's one person, Ryan Beater. We split it up into 2 different departments. As we get through the conversation here, I'm going to suggest that we combine those departments into one. There really isn't any reason to split them out. We can certainly track per diems for ZBA and Planning Commission on different lines if we want to, but Ryan is supporting both of those functions. And you're not going to have the ZBA if you don't have the zoning ordinance, which falls under the Planning Commission anyway. So that's maybe a split that we don't really need to have. There. On the road patrol, the original budget that was submitted requested one more deputy that I'm showing here. Requested it. The funding coming in for road patrol doesn't support another position. This is the maximum number of positions that it'll support. So that's why it's that way. If you want to supplement the road patrol budget with general fund to add a position, we can certainly talk about doing that. But right now, that's the rationale behind the personnel that you see there. And then finally, the other 40s are all in transit, and those are called for at 40-hour work weeks in the contract itself. So those are already taken care of, and it's all federal funds anyway. The other one that I want to mention was the animal control position. That's another activity that, it falls under the sheriff's office now. If the board were so willing, that function does not need to be called out on its own, have its own budget that could be absorbed into the sheriff budget, into the 301 if we so desire. So that's a possibility that's in there, but that's the nickel tour of what the position allocation list looks like. Next document that you'll see in there is just a draft of what that general appropriations resolution would look like. All of the millages are listed at their maximums, but I do have the 911 millage highlighted here, depending on the outcome of the November election. That could be, if the election were successful, that could be a 0.75. What we would do right now, because the election's November, if when we go to adopt the budget and you choose to adopt the maximum millage, the 7494 is what would be adopted. First regular meeting after the election, if the millage proposal is successful, we will go back to amend this to recognize the 0.75. Otherwise, those are the maximums. Just the rest of the language in here is the same language that you've seen in past years. There's certain funds that we have to dedicate to certain things. There's some, for instance, Health Safety Fund Act tells us that we have to spend a certain amount of our operating levy on health department function. So that's what we do within the budget that we have for the health department. We call those out because the statute tells us we have to. So you read those at your leisure. Next document is the resolution to approve the rates for the Board of Canvassers. There was a request that came in to put the rates for a full day at $100, half day at $60. And the time to consider that is when we're doing the budget. So there's a draft of that resolution in here. There's another resolution that talks about commissioner compensation. This is the year, because it's an even numbered year, that you would consider commissioner compensation. Once you set this rate, that's all you can do for the term of office. And this is the last year that we'll have 2-year terms. So this will be considered again in 2 years. And after that, it'll be on a 4-year cycle that you would consider it. There's actually within the statute itself, it says you consider it, but you consider it for the next board. You don't consider it for yourselves. So this is, these are the numbers that are plugged into the budget right now, but clearly are up for discussion. And the board can make those numbers whatever you choose to make. The next resolution is our non-judicial countywide elected officials. These annual rates here are assuming the same 2% increase that our union employees negotiated in their contracts. And you see the specific numbers for each of those positions, and that's worked into the draft budget that you see. The next item is just the list of fund balances at the conclusion of the last fiscal year. Fiscal year 21, which for us ended September 30th of last year. These numbers clearly are moving now. We're nearly a year removed from them, but this is where the year started. And if we need to get into fund balance discussion, this will be a handy sheet for us to look at. Next one is the, I don't really know what order these are going in mind, but it's recommended special fund budgets. So these are the dedicated millages and other funds that we have to have separate from the general fund. You'll see a summary page, tells you the revenue and expenditures proposed in each of these budgets. And then following that, you have the breakdown on the line item for each of those. Some of those are more lengthy than others, but that's the collection of the special funds. The next one is the same thing, only for the general fund. Again, you see the breakdown by department, revenues and expenditures attributed to each, and then you have the line item breakdown for all of them, so that you're able to, if we need to get into any great detail about anything, all the detail is there. The next one is general fund expenditure budget trends. So it takes the general fund budgets that have been approved from 2020 through the recommended 23 budget, and then the percent change is just the percent change over the 22 budget. So that's an easy way to look to see where the greatest movement is. And some of those, for instance, the criminal justice training budget looks like we're cutting that budget by more than half, but there's only $2,400 involved there. So it's not a huge number. By contrast, you have others that are relatively large changes in there that maybe would be worthy of quicker attention. I'm trying to find an example. Here's one. The building security budget, it looks like it's an increase of 18%. That's a factor of budgeting for the maximum, in this case for personnel, assuming we have need for additional security at certain times, we try to budget for the maximum. You can see from the 22 budget, this is the reflecting the budget adjustments we just made yesterday. And based on those adjustments, the demand for additional personnel hasn't been all that high this year. So it looks like it's a huge jump. I think it would be dangerous though for us to cut that budget back to that 50,000 number, because we don't know what we're going to be facing in the coming year. But more about that if we need to get into finer detail. I think that's all of the documents that are in there. Just a few other notes. I already mentioned the 10 officers in the road patrol millage and why 11 were requested, but we've only got funding for 10. A few line items that I'd like to consolidate, and just not something I'm comfortable doing without bringing to you first. And I already mentioned a couple of them. One of them is the phone line. Right now, clerk's office is spending a lot of time going through the phone bill every month and saying this much goes to administration, this much goes to equalization, et cetera. Time that could be better spent doing other things. We do have one rate that we're paying for the phone, and that's a rate that Tom oversees. Forget if it's AT&T or who it's with, but it's the rate that we're going to pay. My suggestion is, since we have a department, if you will, it's called just general county expenses, we have a phone line in there, and we charge the phone bill off to that line rather than going through the breakouts. Now, some departments, particularly I think of like childcare fund, we can get reimbursed for some of the expenses, and phone is one of them. So if that's the case, okay, well, we'll find out what amount of that or what percentage of that goes to childcare. We'll document it, and we can submit that to the state. But that doesn't mean we need to document that for 30, 35 other departments as well, and try to get all that to balance. Same thing with the copier lease. They are what they are. Each department might have a specific need. Some departments have need for more machinery than others. That's fine, but it's still a single rate that we're paying. We can break it out for a department if we ever need to for reimbursement, but I think it'd be much more practical to look at that as a single line. Same again with the postage. I have departments, I think we're one of those, that maybe will be charged 53 cents in a month on postage, just not worth the time going through to figure all that out, right? So again, going into that county general expense activity and just put our postage in there, it might free up some time. Register of Deeds is here. Denise explained to me the budget recommendation that's in here right now for the revenue to Register of Deeds is pretty consistent with the trends that we see with the revenues for the past few years. But as Denise points out, she is on the ground in her office. She's concerned about the revenue flow coming in based on trends that she's seeing right now. Those are trends that I don't see because I don't work in that office, but she's seeing those right now. I think, worthwhile to have that conversation with Denise and take another look at those numbers to make sure everybody's comfortable with what we're calling out for revenue. One thing that I'm pretty sure it's not included right now in that general fund. We had that additional department, probation and parole, that we plugged in yesterday with the budget adjustment. That needs to be plugged into here too. It's about $2,000 expense. Not going to break the budget by any stretch, but you can't spend money if you don't have a budget to spend it against. And so we need to pick that up. So that'll be added back into here. I already mentioned combining the planning and ZBA. Two wild cards that are still out there, one of them more wild than the other. We don't have our health insurance rates yet for January 1. Obviously, we know what they are through the balance of this year. But by contrast, we do know what the hard cap rates are. So that's the number that's been used here for all of our employees. I don't anticipate Mesa is going to go above the hard cap. So I think we're probably in good shape there, but we won't know for certain until we get those rates. The biggest wild card, though, is the MERS rates. We have a number of, we have outstanding liability for the defined benefit plan that some of our employees still have. And then, of course, the retirees have right now. The actuarial will tell us what those are. The actuarial landed in my email box yesterday afternoon. Haven't even had a chance to open it up yet. I'm very concerned about that because, as you all know, the markets have done some pretty funky things over the last year, and the rates that we end up having to pay, a large part of what the actuaries look at is the projected rate of return on their investments. And if they're down 20%, that means our bill goes up 20%. They still have to maintain that DB obligation. So that one could throw a wrench into this. If that happens, we'll have a discussion about it and talk about the impacts of it. We were in pretty decent shape at the end of the last year. I believe we were right around 80% funded, but don't be surprised if it looks like that funded rate goes down to like 70 or something like that, just because of what the markets have done. I do know that MERS also went into some of the other variables like the mortality rates, and we're playing with those. Our mortality rate, it's a plus or a minus, but it got worse. The life expectancy changed across the country with COVID, and I'm curious to see how that plays into what the actuaries have done, with those figures. So those need to have another look as well. And I think for the most part, that's those are the highlights of what's in the budget. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go in and look at specific numbers, or if you have questions or not. I've asked the Sheriff's Department to be represented here. They representing 35–40% of the overall budget. So I suspect if there are questions, that some of those will be there. I do need to mention too the MSU extension budget for next year. I want to say that we didn't do ourselves a lot of favors when we reduced that millage last year. I think it at the time, with the information we had, it obviously looked like the right thing to do. But when we got backed up, that one invoice that was missed, and it actually wasn't missed this year, I think it was actually last year that it was missed. That really threw a wrench in how all that worked in their budget. So they're going to go into the fiscal year with no fund balance. However, when you look at their the budget that I put together for them, I did suggest, and I think this is a reasonable thing to do, is that we do a couple of transfers to recognize that the secretary that we have assigned there is not just working for extension, but is also acting as not so much a secretary as a receptionist for our other departments that are over there, particularly our building inspections department. When people come in, she's helping guide them to where they need to be and helping set up appointments and so on. Same with the planning and zoning, working there, and with veterans that's in there. She's acting And you see when you walk into that building, I mean, she's right there acting as a receptionist for everybody. So this budget does suggest some transfer of funds from a little bit from the general fund to represent planning and zoning, and a little bit from the building inspections fund to represent them, to help, recognize that we have some activity that's non-MSU that's in there. And that's all of the notes that I had. This is at this point your meeting. Now, keep in mind what I put out here is strictly, recommendation. There's no finality to it whatsoever. We've got through last meeting in September to discuss, maneuver, and so on. Our only obligation here is to make sure we come out the other end with a balanced budget. This one is balanced, but there may be other areas that you maybe want to have emphasis or maybe less emphasis. A lot of time to massage these numbers to get where you're comfortable. This is the biggest policy decision of the year, without question. So not to be taken lightly. And that's not to say that there needs to be a lot of movement, but there's an awful lot of opportunity yet to make changes as you see fit, talk them through, work the arithmetic, make sure everything works out, and then be ready to adopt on schedule. So that's the nickel tour.
Commissioners,
I go along with the recommendations on a couple of those combining and integrating the funds. We just gotta go take them department by department here and get a good grasp on what's happening.
Denise, did you want to come up?
I think the difference from what I proposed to what Tim proposed was 25,000 total in revenue, 20,000 in reporting fees, and 5,000 in transfer tax. During COVID, we were seeing $1 million days where sales of houses coming in would be total over $1 million. We're not seeing that anymore. The inventory for real estate has went down. Prices, you can see in the market, are starting to come down. There are certain areas, like Ogemaw is one of them, where the values have retained and interest rates are going up. So forecast is it's not going to be as revenue driven as it has been the past couple of years. So my concern is that, and it's only 25,000, but my concern is at 25,000. Because I've never not met a bunch.
And you're seeing the trend, so I mean, you're the subject matter expert on that issue, so I think we know.
That was my only concern.
Questions for Denise? Commissioner Wicker?
Where is it, 25,000?
It would be under the revenue.
So you've got two of them. You have the recording fees and transfer tax.
Transfer tax.
Denise is spot on with their numbers, 25,000 between the two of them.
20,000 in recording fees, 5,000. And we're seeing an uptick in sheriff's deeds again. You know, mortgage foreclosure sales are starting to go back up.
What page are you at?
How does that affect?
Directly. In the recommended budget toward the bottom. We don't have a page number.
We don't get money for that. We get money for the recording fee. But typically, those are houses that, one, taxes are delinquent on.
Right.
And two, they're not making their payments. They get to live in them for 6 months to a year free.
Yeah.
By the time the person gets them, they have to rehabilitate them because most of the time.
Right. They don't care.
Get
Yeah.
trashed.
They don't care. Yeah.
And it takes a while for that to get back on the market to be a sellable home.
Right. Right.
I mean, there's a few out there you can buy, walk
Page
into.
41 of 42.
Yeah, 41 or 40.
So it would, Tim raised recording fees, 20,000, and automation or transfer tax, 5,000. So a total of 25,000 added to the budget.
At the middle column, you can see where we were through June 30th. Actually, I had a little bit of time since then, but based on that, that's where my projection came from. I yield to Denise, knowing on the ground what's happening there, like in real time.
Typically in the winter, we're much slower. There's not as much going on. And this year, our deposits, our weekly deposits were hardly under 5 figures, which is really high. I can remember when there was a weekly deposit that didn't quite reach $1,000. But yeah, things are moving. Housing market needs to be padded here. We're lacking, but we're lacking in a lot of counties too. So
Thank you.
Point out to the board too, we do our quarterly adjustments. So if it looks like it's going through the roof again, this time next year, we'll be taking a look at that modification. But I think Denise is right to be safe, going back to what her original proposal was, to be safest.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Denise? Thank
In the
you.
last couple of years, you've been doing that Microsoft conversion. That are we past that now?
the conversion was done. I have another conversion I want to do after I finish paying for the software, which will be in January. So next year I'll be coming to you with that.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Is that something we should plan for now?
It comes out of automation, so.
Automation.
I
Yeah.
pay for it.
So she should plan for that. You typically do you typically have all of that in your budget.
Yeah, it comes out of automation, which is a special fund for the microfilm that you're paying for in the budget is just the backup stuff that of the daily work that we're doing now that's being put into underground storage. So the conversion is the company comes in and microfilms all the old books. And I still have one part left to do. The last time I think it was 80,000. I don't have quite as big a project. Also want to do all of the plats and get a large printer so that I can print plats out on larger paper so you can read them better. And my microfilm printer is obsolete. And I was able to get toner from Genesee County. They sent me for free because you can't buy it anymore. So if that printer goes down, I can't even make a copy of the plat.
And the automation fund
We'll pay for all that.
will pay for it.
Mr. Ogier, you want to come up?
Really?
What you got to tell us?
We don't have a lot to tell you. My report you got, basically includes what happened last month. Other than that, I came in case you have any questions for me.
Questions for Mr. Ogier?
I gotta get to the page.
Oh.
I'm looking for it.
32 of 42.
Going the wrong way. Any changes? Anything you want to talk about on here before we?
What are you seeing in housing trends, Brian? Is it,
They're starting to go back up.
I was gonna say, are they housing?
You mean housing inmates?
Yes,
Yeah, your drug crimes are getting worse. So there's.
because
more-
that's a cost. I mean, the more inmates you've got, so I'm just wondering if you're,
Cost, what do you mean? Because we've had this discussion.
Well, you have, right now you have, well, we'll get into that.
the more inmates you have, the more food costs you have, the more medical expenses there are, on the.
Well, everything's going up.
Right.
Everything's going up right now. It doesn't matter what it is. It's food, everything. It's based on the economy. I mean, it's just nothing, it's nothing we can control.
Exactly.
We do our best to keep the costs down. meal plan and all that.
I know that. I'm just wondering if you're seeing
You
a
see-
higher inmate.
Yes. Yeah, things are going up with
You mean charge cost to house inmates is what you're asking, or
I haven't, the number of inmates that are in that facility.
yeah,
If we're seeing an increase or if we're level of the number of inmates, the daily average population.
but right now we had, well, yesterday's numbers, we had 97.
How many of those are Gladwin?
You can break that. Well, we had 51 housed in a couple days ago that were housed in. They were not ours. The rest were ours. So you had some Oscoda, some
Right.
Gladwin. To give you a number today, some get out, some don't. I don't know which ones.
No, I'm not asking for specific, no, I'm just what trend wise, if we're going up.
Well,
because during COVID, we were quite low,
yes,
correct?
that and then a law change where certain offenses were no longer
Yep.
lodged. So that brought numbers down. Those numbers are going up. I mean,
Okay.
your drug crimes.
And
are
then
getting-
changing to 17 and 18.
Yeah, so this isn't new. I mean, it happens. You know, over a period of time, you see numbers go down, you see numbers go back up. It's just part of the process, you know, and who's in office and what laws are in place and it changes.
Its total capacity is 144.
144 full. Yeah, we try to keep about 85% of that. It gives us fluctuation for people coming off the road, classification. So there was a time we averaged 115 to 120 inmates a day, every day. You remember some of those things. I'm sure you do too.
Tennessee County.
Like say we're 97 right now. And I found out this morning through conversation with her that there's a jail up north looking to house out, but I haven't got any of that information on our J website. Nobody's relayed that information to me, so I'm gonna reach out to them and see what they got. See where they're at, so.
That's what I heard from Gaylord,
Gaylor, yeah,
trying to build a new jail up there, but it's not happening.
yeah, I imagine right now. I took the notes on it, so I'll reach out to them and see what.
Nobody's ever approved to me that we make money doing that.
Well, no, but we also had quite,
I looked over the numbers time and time again.
no, but we also had the discussion, no matter what, the staffing's the same.
I
mean-
heard all the arguments, but I've never seen where we made money.
I don't think we make money, but hopefully we just don't
Matter.
lose as much money.
Matter of fact, I'm seeing historically here from 2021 that, you know, we're seeing a lot of costs going up. Now, I understand costs are going up. I've seen what the Michigan Department of Corrections cost per inmate is double what I've been told the county costs. And, you know, stood here with the past sheriff and telling me that it was only $9 a day to take care of a prisoner. You know, well, every time you take a shower, water costs go up. If it was free, truck stops wouldn't charge drivers to take a shower. You know, it costs more to turn on more lights, it costs more to turn on the shower, turn on the faucet.
Your lights and your heat, they're gonna be the same regardless. That
Oh, no.
man, they're not turned on and off by inmates. They're on or they're off by officer control in the whole facility. So your food costs, food costs, water somewhat, yes. But that's not gonna eat $30 a day per inmate.
If we took just this proposed budget, assumed we were full, and no matter what, we have to staff as though we're full, right? So I mean, this is pretty
The
fixed.
staffing set,
So if we just took these expenses and assumed 144 inmates throughout the year, we're at $44.53 per inmate per day.
It wouldn't cost us any more then. That we would never, you'd never have to come to us and ask us for more money.
Hang on,
Build this place 144, 365 days.
Okay, were you
I
were finished,
doubt it.
correct?
I highly doubt you won't come here and ask. for
Actually.
more money.
Because I was trying to follow
Your
where you,
costs will go up. Your costs will go up and there'll be another reason why.
Well, this is
That's exactly right.
sort of
The
a
more
worst
people you put
case,
in there, the
right?
more the costs are gonna go up.
But that's not what he's saying. He's saying the costs are fixed.
I'm
And that's-
talking medical
I'm,
expenses,
I'm,
liabilities.
I'm not saying the costs are fixed. The costs are fixed for certain things. The costs are fixed for your heat. The costs are fixed for your electricity. Whatever the going rate is, it doesn't matter. We're gonna heat that building the same as if we have one inmate or 100.
My inmate, I open the door to the outside one time a day. I got more inmates, I open the door more and more.
I'd beat this dead horse today.
Hang on, please.
Can't beat it no
Can we
more.
let Tim talk?
I think you're talking the same thing here. There's controlled expenses and then there's uncontrolled expenses.
Correct.
So I'm sure Tim can elaborate on that.
I mean, we control the staffing.
Yes.
If you're gonna have 144, you've got Department of Corrections has told us you need to have this many staff. End of story. Doesn't matter if you have 100 inmates in there, 144, 50, you gotta have this number of staff. So we know what those numbers are. We may fluctuate, some with overtime and some with whatever, but by and large, those are numbers that we're gonna have. Costs we can't control. If it costs, how do we heat? Do we heat with gas?
Yes.
All right, so if natural gas goes up, we don't get to control that.
No.
We're gonna pay it, but we can come within pretty decent reason of where we think the budget is. So my point is that I was leading to is gonna ask you, what do we charge the other counties per inmate? Based on this scenario that we've developed for 2023, we're at $44.53 per inmate per day if we're at full capacity. We know that. And that's how we have to budget for it. Now, I don't know, again, what do we charge?
We get $39 a day?
I think it's $30 a day.
It was
We were-
35 a few years ago.
No, we went up $1. We went up $1 every year.
No,
It's 29.
Genesee County was 35.
Genesee County is different.
Oscoda County, we did less. And the big thing there was they were bringing them to us. We didn't have to go get them. Now we're going to Gladwin, to get them.
Big cost to consider though too, and I know because we've seen it, we've discussed it a few times, are the medical costs. What we're charging doesn't include medical, right? So if we have special medical costs, we're billing that on top of the 30 or 35, whatever it is that we're charging.
Correct.
We
So
bill
that's-
them. We don't
We
pay
bill
for
them,
that.
exactly.
So the out of county inmates are actually costing us less to house them than the in-county inmates. Those are all,
When you bring in the medical expenses, you're talking?
and that can be substantial.
Well, we know it is just by
Me.
going over,
can't-
going over
can't-
claims, you got, some inmates from Oscoda County that are, the number that they've got. Their medical bills are twice of what Ogemaw inmates are, where they're a minority of the population, so.
Billed back to the county, to their county.
But you
We
can't
can't
fill
control that.
you can't fill a
Right,
place with out of county because you're gonna have crime in the county. You gotta have a place for it. That's been tried before.
But until we get to capacity.
Ship out some while we're shipping some in.
So I guess where were you headed with that?
Just the cost per unit, if you will, the 44.53. And another point to make too, when you are talking about these other contracts that we have out there, that's gonna be our cost no matter what, 44.53,
44.50.
no matter.
If you
what.
wanna say you make
Bring it
money,
in.
you gotta make money over, you gotta charge over 44.50.
Well, or consider it this way, we're gonna have that expense. And we're gonna have to fund, through general fund, but it would be nice to have the Oscodas of the world come in to help offset our cost. We're gonna have to pay that regardless, so if we can get them to take.
Correct.
So that's the
20% of it.
cost
That's good.
without the income from it.
Right, this is the
Right.
cost no matter what.
And it's,
$200,000 and that number's gonna change.
it's not only the income that the other counties pay us to house. We have to subtract the food costs from that, obviously, the more water use, obviously, that, so we're not getting the total $30. You're taking some of that away. But then there's the aspect of the commissary funding, which helps pay for equipment stuff that we deal with the inmates. We got more housed in sometimes, but, and mind you, it's in the commissary fund, you've looked at it. Half of that's from housed in inmates. So a lot of that we use actually to buy equipment and stuff with that doesn't come out of the taxpayers' pockets, is coming out of the commissary fund. So you don't only look at the $30 a day, you have to look at the commissary funding as well. That's where a huge difference comes. And I think sometimes we do just as well with the commissary as we do with the funding that we get from the other counties. If you look at
Well,
those two things.
If you want to look at what comes in, you gotta look what goes out too, and this has been a thing that this county has done over the years, is move certain costs from departments to another line. The payment for that jail comes out of appropriations. Payment for that jail is really under the sheriff's office, because the jail is under the sheriff's office. So that when he says the sheriff's office is 35% of the total budget, yeah, that's everything. That's everything that has to do with the sheriff's office. Appropriations for $375,000 a year coming from appropriations is really under the umbrella of the sheriff's department. The animal control, it's under the sheriff's. Secondary road patrol, it's under the umbrella. Road patrol now, millage, is under the, that's what it all adds up, and we're almost $4 million. So, you know, you gotta look at everything. That's all I'm saying. The point is everything. Me, I just assumed I was only Ogemaw inmates in there. If the costs are fixed, the costs are fixed. Less stress on the people that work there because there's less people to watch. I'm fine with that. My personal opinion, I'm fine with that. We don't, county government doesn't need to be in business. We don't need to be in business. And we shouldn't do it cheaper than somebody else. In Parks and Rec, we got the RV park. I'm adamant that we don't discount our spots cheaper than somebody else. Because we shouldn't be in business in competition with somebody else. Same thing with the jail. We shouldn't be in competition trying to go out there and get these. And doing it for less. If it's $44.50 a cost, it's $44.50 a cost. When do you make money? When you pay your cost and you get extra. That's when you're making money. You're generating revenue, yes. But are you really making money?
Nobody's making money.
Commissioner Serbrook.
You're just offsetting some of the expense. That's, I mean, it is what it is.
And I look at this, we're saving our taxpayers some money.
Exactly.
Saving our taxpayers dollars. That's what
So
my
it's-
job
it's-
is.
it's
That's what my
offsetting.
job is to save our taxpayers money, if I can do it.
I can tell you for a fact from working over there, the ones out of Oscoda or probably Gladwin are a hell of a lot easier to work with than our own people. They're a pain in the ass.
I was hoping, I was surprised, and you weren't at the meeting. I was surprised to see the overtime still as high as what it was. Do you foresee changes there?
The overtime's been coming down, but we did have some in the academy. At one time, we had 5 that crossed for a week. I filled some of those positions with part-time where I could, not in the jail, but in the areas where they don't have inmate contact. But the overtime will come back down. You're gonna have spurts where it goes and it's uncontrollable. If I have somebody on vacation, somebody calls in sick, I have to fill that 6 months.
Well, that's fair, but I guess how many opening spots do you have right now?
We have 1 open right now. 1 position to fill.
So then the overtime should be, I mean, you're gonna have vacations, you're gonna have. sickness.
Summertime's the
Fair.
worst. This is where you're gonna get your most overtimes during the summer, because this is where most of your vacations come. And then you get somebody that doesn't want to come to work on a weekend, so they call in sick. And I have to fill that position. And I have to follow the contract. They got so many rights as far as.
Right.
So it ends up being to the point where you're gonna have to fill some of those positions, and it's out of my control at that point unless they pass a certain point, then I can say, hey, why are you this? Why are you doing that? Doesn't mean I don't talk to them. I keep good track of who calls in and all that, but you're gonna get overtime, especially in the summertime. And then the 2 academies that crossed at the same time in the spring, which I had to send them because you have to do it within a year. And I wasn't sure they'd have a fall academy because they don't always. Now it looks like they're going to. What I wasn't aware of, they were going to at the time. So I had to make sure those people got in under that year requirement. So I had to send both academies at the same time they were there together for a week. It was 5 of them at it. So,
Well, you had an issue last year too with the cook.
yeah.
I mean, You know, the position my wife was in, she was working 7 days a week. There was a ton of overtime
Yeah,
there.
but initially, at the beginning of the year, a lot of that got ate up in the kitchen. Absolutely, until we come over and we filled those positions. Yeah, no. We should be good there with the kitchen. Now we shouldn't be getting much there.
I was just surprised with last week seeing the amount of overtime was that has still been happening. I was surprised by that number, so
Oh.
hopefully that does continue to go down.
It will go down.
Commissioner Newbecker?
The only thing I was looking at was, we still had it broken out between like cooks and corrections officers. I thought we combined that. So wouldn't that become one line item at this point?
It's not settled yet, right?
You're looking at the cook wages?
We still, yeah, we still have a civilian cook.
Just one?
Yes. That's,
If she retires or doesn't want to come back or however.
So how come that's still under I guess, never mind. I'm thinking out loud.
yeah, don't say it out loud.
I have a bad habit of that. So that will be combined once whatever happens in the future happens, correct?
Correct.
That's your goal, and that's your end goal with that line item.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
But that obviously be up to the sheriff, but that would be what my suggestion would be for it to be, yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
I'm good.
Administrator. Suggestions, anything?
Just to remind the board that as these things evolve, we do our pretty good, what do I call it, very good schedule right now of doing our quarterly adjustments. I mean, those are happening pretty consistently. So if things do change, when they change, we'll have an opportunity to adjust the budget then. So in any of these positions, we have, I don't know, whatever might happen. If we decide we're gonna do something different, the way we do the books, we make the adjustment. Because we have one of those positions that's unfilled and it's costing us overtime, opportunity to make the adjustment. Right, so if we're not using the cook wages, we move it to the overtime, whatever we need to do.
What's your opinion? You've worked in numerous different counties. What's your opinion on housing inmates? From out of county inmates?
If we have the space, I'm all for it, but that's the key. We've got to make sure we take care of our issues first, and it appears that we are. If we were not, we'd be hearing from judges saying, what are you doing? I have nowhere to put these people. But that's not the case now. And because we have to staff, and that's the biggest expense that we have to staff as though we're fully capacity. We may as well be as close to full capacity as we can if somebody else is paying the bill. And like we pointed out,
We're paying part of the bill anyway.
yeah, it's offsetting our costs that way. So it's helping our general fund if that happens. Have full confidence in Brian in the department there to make sure we don't get ourselves in a bind with our own needs. And it has not been a problem that I know of anyway. And believe me, if it becomes a problem, we will hear from the judges.
In our contract, if you remember correctly, we only guarantee so many beds for that county, and Gladwin right now is a temporary issue, and they get the same aspects as the Oscoda contract, so I'm gonna guarantee them so many beds. So we will have our beds regardless. Our judges aren't gonna go without being able to house because we're housing, and that's not gonna happen. We take our courts first.
Are they renovating over there? Are they building a new jail?
They had something going on mechanical. They're doing some renovating, I think. I don't know exactly what. I didn't get in detail with that. Several years ago, there's 4 counties, Aranac, Gladwin, Roscommon, ourselves got into a contract that if emergency need comes up, and they need to house out, that these 4 counties work together to make sure that happens to help them.
Who would sign that one?
So are we getting,
Well, we're finding out there's contracts
That's been
within
in
the
place.
county.
Yeah, that's been in place for years. It was renewed again in,
I
I
know.
think, 2018.
Yeah, I know. This is the point. We had this discussion with this contract over in Lake Ogemaw. It was signed by somebody that can't sign contracts.
so are we the only ones housing Gladwin County inmates, or
I
are,
believe so, but I couldn't be sure. I couldn't tell you that for sure. I know they were trying to get as many out of the jail as possible, so they have to house out. But then I believe we got them all.
and you'll contact Gaylord?
I will. I'll make that phone call.
Thank-
And that contract that we're talking about between the four counties was signed by the four sheriffs. Right? That was agreement between the
Well,
four sheriffs.
that affects the county financially. So the sheriff does not have that authority to do so.
Thank you.
That's all.
You're welcome.
It's not, nothing against,
I know, I'm not,
Thank
I'm
you.
fine.
just because I ask a question doesn't mean I'm
I
against
know.
something.
I know your
Thank
point of
you.
views. I'm all right. with that.
Thank you for updating us on the inmates and please keep us updated. It's nice to know things versus secondhand and, you know,
Will do. And if you don't need me, I gotta go. I got.
Oh, yeah.
and you have my number now, so.
I do. I do.
Sheriff and undersheriff, want to come on up?
Not now.
I gotta wait. Well, good morning.
You got a meeting, you gotta go.
If you,
You're gonna need the
if
question.
you find a fish and get a hold of me, okay?
Will do.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Just kidding.
Want to give us a rundown of what you got?
I don't know where you want to start. It's all kinds of different.
You have the
budgets.
floor.
We could talk about all kinds of different. Depends on you want to start easy or you want to get to the,
Let's start easy.
What, did you get what you wanted?
I'm satisfied. I think, between Tim and I think we've come up with some very reasonable budgets. We did request 11 deputies under the 259, but totally respect that when Tim did the numbers, we can't make that work. So 10 deputies will still give us the staffing levels to do the business that we need to do for the upcoming year. He made some minor adjustments. There are some fixed costs, but we'll get into those. So we can start with animal control. How about that?
Perfect.
Animal.
You are gonna start easy.
Start easy and then we'll move on.
Major animal control.
I'm looking Marine Patrol, Snowmobile Patrol, where are we? General Fund.
430, 101 to 434.
So it's gonna be toward the bottom.
We're just, I don't think I went too far. Corrections.
Page 35 of 40.
35,
Jeez,
the other way.
I should
There
have
it is.
started there.
there it is. We got it.
Not a whole lot of highlights. Obviously, our budgets right now are built on higher gas prices. We'll knock on wood, they're gonna stay where they're at, which is lower, but we can't guarantee that. I point out the 7,500, we've talked about that contract with the shelter for the animals and everything. That's still in the process of being drafted. Once we get that, we'll present that for attorney review and for your review, but the 7,500 is plugged into the budget, assuming those costs for the dogs are gonna go there. The hours, so we're looking at, we built the budget on 1,040 hours plus an extra 100 hours for the summer. To come to the wages of the 18,240, and that is raising his hourly salary to $16 an hour, which would match the part-time transport. So we will get 1,140 hours of work. The extra hours flexed into the summer, and he'll get that bump in pay.
What's he currently making right now?
1359.
Oh my gosh,
And then.
that's terrible.
An extra 100 hours in the summertime.
Yeah, we built into the budget that extra 100 hours to cover the busier time of season during the summer. So he'll work additional hours from April, May till about September. Just to cover call-ins and some of the emergency type stuff that he has, so. Uh-oh,
So. I'm fine with that, but don't we have to approve that wage change?
That is part of the budget. So if you were to approve the budget the way it's set up, you'd be approving that too.
Okay.
Just trying to see, I get these things so small, I should get cheaters. I don't know if there's any questions on it or.
No problem us incorporating this into the sheriff's office's budget and keep not have a separate line.
Are you okay with that is what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking Paul, you see any problem with incorporating this right into the sheriff's office budget?
Well, we would just take certain line items from the animal control, put that in the sheriff 301 and
Or would you rather have it as a separate budget?
it wouldn't make too much of a difference to me, I don't think, especially with the system, you know. I think it still would be recognizable enough to know that when you got to that part of the 301 budget, that you're dealing with the animal control window. Because they would all be in a sequence of number and 101, 301, whatever.
It's a deputized person too, right?
Yep.
He has full authority as a deputy?
No,
He's not certified.
he's not.
He's not MCO
He's not
certified.
MCOs.
Yeah, but he's
He's everything else but that.
All right, there really isn't much else in the budget, I think, as far as animal control. The biggest thing is the hours and then the raise and pay that would have to be approved by the board, giving him the $16 an hour.
Now, he had voiced a few different times as far as I would say housing animals. I guess I'm not sure of a better term for that. Are we running into any problems with cost with that and availability? Do you know?
We are running into additional costs because if you recall, we're now being billed by
Mhm.
the Ray family, where before we weren't. So we've seen additional costs in this budget, current budget cycle that one wasn't budgeted for, and two, now we're paying for the animals that are coming in. So that's why we were talking about the contract with Ray, which would give us X number of dogs throughout the course of the year for set price. And then anything over that would be so much per animal. That's where that $7,500.
That's the animal care underneath animal care.
Animal care, that is something that is new, that's kind of cropped up on us since we started receiving bills with the change of management there. Just for information of the board, and this is still in the early stages, but there is a draft animal control, it's basically for the county. So Scott has done some research with Gladwin and came up with a template. Currently, when a citation, when he gets to the point of enforcement on the citation, he writes it under state law. State gets 80% of that fine, county gets 20. If you're able to come up with an ordinance that's adoptable and workable for the animal control, those percentages would be switched. Where if he got to an enforcement stage and wrote a citation, the county would get 80, state would get 20. So we're working on that, try to offset some of the cost also, but again, that's in the early stages. The attorneys are looking at it right now. I have to set up a phone call with him, kind of sort out exactly, because I've got a pretty broad ordinance right now.
So he said it hasn't been updated in a very long time.
Yeah, the what's in place now is not even close to what it is, and what we've drafted is very broad. The attorney wants to talk to me and kind of narrow down the focus a little bit and get it to where it needs to be, but then that gives him, the animal control officer, the ability to write a local ordinance, which would offset some of the housing costs and stuff there for this budget, hopefully.
Would be a world of difference between 20%, 80%
Yeah.
for revenue.
He called me a couple weeks ago and explained all of that. And talked about some of the housing issues and the cost of, he was writing a whole bunch of tickets and
Yeah, but
cost of those and
cost of, yeah,
that's what he said. He explained the 80-20 and I was stunned by that we only get 20% of that.
hopefully we can get that fixed here going into this next budget cycle.
He does a very good job.
He does
He does a great job and he seems to really enjoy his job.
most days.
Well, that's probably true for all of us.
Everybody is.
Most days.
Commissioner Newbecker, do you have anything?
No.
Mr. Scott? Oh,
No. I'm just wondering about the incorporating
I like seeing it separately like this, but I don't. If it would make it easier and simplify it, I guess I understand it, but I like this breakdown, I guess.
And I'm good either way. It does give you an individual page that you print out in a report instead of having to fish through 301. Pull out animal control, that would be beneficial for when you're looking at that. You wouldn't have to print out the whole 301 budget and then sift down the numbers to find it.
It all takes time, costs money.
Mhm.
And one, it just depends on how you address it, I'm thinking on the lines of, as the sheriff. Any of his training and now incorporates into my training budget. Any of his, there's so many things that he does the same as everybody else, and those monies come into the sheriff's general budget. All the sheriff really tracking is his performance and some of his direct costs that, say, a deputy doesn't have a cost. A deputy's not gonna have an animal cost, he will. That's the way I look at it,
You're saying like his training would though.
Yeah.
So I guess then if you wanted to look at how much training, we'd have to go back through the records and say we spent.
Well, your training costs went down this year, even your request was down, but if that's training revenue went, or expense went into the total sheriff's training, then, you wouldn't, if another training class came up, it's not like you gotta come here and say, hey, I need some more money because it's $150 more, it's already there. Then deputies even get, we're not talking much here because it's one person and part-time, but I just look at it as the manager side of it. I just have as much under my umbrella as I can because it's more resources.
Commissioner Serbrook?
Having sat in a position that Paul's sitting in, I don't know if I would. I think it'd be nice to be able to look at that animal control budget separately. Personally, I do. But, I understand the other side of the coin as well, but I personally would like to be able to take and just look at, okay, what's animal control costing us?
Like we are right now.
Exactly. And if it's not a big deal to leave it separate, which I don't think it probably is, I think it's just nice just to be able to take and say, okay, just to be able to look at that specific position. Because it is a different animal than the rest of the people under that umbrella of the sheriff's office. So, my 2 cents.
I would still track it separately within my department. I would track.
Just having a separate, but just having as a standalone budget though makes it a lot easier to track if you want to
That's fine.
snapshot,
That's fine.
And what was your rationale behind it, Tim?
Wasn't my suggestion.
Oh,
I mean, I see both sides to it, don't get me wrong.
question was it theirs?
No, Craig's.
Oh.
There you go.
Okay.
Don't just say my name.
You just got thrown under the bus.
Okay, next, undersheriff,
Which direction you want to
keep moving slow here.
We're going.
Whichever way you want to go.
You're going up in your thing. I mean, I've got road patrol, marine,
Page 23.
road patrol.
23?
23.
Oh, no, road patrol.
Which one?
Patrol's in a different.
23
folder.
sheriff's office.
Is it?
Yeah, let's stick with general fund for right
Okay.
now, and then we can flip over to the other file.
General fund would be marine.
Well, let's start with the sheriff's office,
Yeah.
301, we'll work our way down.
Let's do that.
Which one? Okay, that's
23,
Page 23.
What is it?
23.
All right. Here we go.
Okay, what you want?
Very comfortable with the numbers that are in there, especially for some of the fixed costs that we're gonna experience this year. It's unfortunate that we're at a 5-year cycle for replacement vests for deputies that have been with the department for that period of time. So we have a fixed number of ballistics that we have to replace in order to keep them safe. So I've got those numbers at $1,000 a vest built into the equipment line item. We just have to do that. Plus there's extra for the anticipated new officers that we're gonna be getting.
About revenue, you think the expectation for revenue is reasonable? Can you attain those levels?
And which ones?
Well, sheriff services, we're asking, you asked for a budget of 23,000. The administrator set it at 25. You've not attained in the first 9 months, you have not got to the amended budget yet. But you probably will because you're only $1,000 off. You think you can get us $25,000 in sheriff services next year?
From what I've been seeing in the trends, I mean, if we go back and look at it, we've been consistently in the ballpark of those numbers. From what I recall when we were putting the budgets together. So I think it's a realistic revenue expectation. Obviously, it's,
Well, you requested 23 and the administrator gave you a 25 number. So you thought you could get to 23. Can you get to 25?
we'll do everything we can based on the customers that come in the door.
Okay.
to get our
Mortgage
goals.
foreclosures increase, sheriff services will increase revenue wise. And you heard from Denise, she's seeing more foreclosure sales,
You
so.
know,
Why the decline in the sheriff's OWI from 2021 for 890 to 750?
890 is what we got so far this year.
I know. So my question is, why is that number going down? Why are we taking it from 890 where we're at right now to 750?
Why not expect?
Because
Why not expect more?
I want more, not less.
I know, but there was a trend to kind of up and down with that based on what happened, so I.
Based on election year?
You have to do a historical,
That was not okay.
Oh,
That was not okay.
Really? I'll look at the camera and say it. It's okay with me.
It's on camera.
And I agree with you, we'd like to put, we'd expect 1,000, but the historical data showed kind of an up and down pattern as far as what came in under this OWI thing. To be safe, that we don't over budget
What all comes
over
in?
budget revenue.
the revenue.
Well, it just gets me that when we talk to corrections, they're all anxious to make money and try to generate more and more money. And the sheriff's office, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll make you $29,000 and I'll spend $1 million here.
Okay, I gotta,
Well, that's the two lines in bold there.
so you said what
It's a
comes
different
in?
animal.
What comes in under OWI?
It's always there.
I don't know exactly the breakdown that I could sit here and explain to you right now.
Give me a general, like just
It has to
broad.
do with the prosecutor's office and OWI enforcement. Money that comes over reference that.
Arrest, right?
Assuming it's arrest, I don't have the exact particulars, so I don't want to overspeak or say something that's wrong, but it's related to OWI arrest. and
Prosecution.
I think a lot of it is education too. We don't find the OWIs like we used to back a few years ago.
But I must not be understanding what they are. I guess when I'm thinking OWI, it's an arrest. And again, with us being fully staffed for 24-hour now, I would think that number, which has not been well, I guess.
I don't think that number totally represents arrests.
No,
Okay, that's what I'm not
Ticket
understanding.
Revenue goes to the district courts, doesn't it? The
it's,
fines and costs and all.
Well, then what generates this line then? I guess you're asking what generates.
Right, I do want more information, because I would have think of where we're staffed, which we're fully staffed now, and hopefully we'll continue, that number should, I mean, it went up pretty significantly. I would think that number would continue to incline, not decline. I would just like more information of what that means.
no, and I agree with you. I can get that information and get it to Tim to be disseminated. I can't.
That's fair. You're
I don't-
being honest, and you're not saying stuff that's not factual. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
But we can find that
We'll
out.
get the answer to it.
Right, we'll figure out exactly what that is, but I know the number that we plugged in was just because the trends have been up and down over the years, so we erred on the side of caution to make sure we didn't shoot for the moon and only get a star. I said the wages are set
for the staffing level of the 10. Which is very functional still for us. The 11 would be ideal, but the 10 is gonna be.
That's a different budget.
Oh,
Where's
sorry,
this
we're
general?
still on the general.
Yeah.
The 301, so sheriff, under sheriff, the 2 lieutenants. Again, the equipment line is increased due to vest replacement, both lieutenants need their vest replaced. Gas is increased. See how that plays out.
That's a crapshoot.
It is.
Vehicles, this kind of gonna cover both of them too. I guess when we're talking about budget, let's see what the board thinks and deputy better, let's do vehicles first. Tahoes right now are the price to purchase as opposed to the Ford Explorers. For whatever reason, the Ford Explorers have went up recently, doing $10,000 more. Over top of the cost of the Tahoe. We should know by the 16th. On the USDA grant finally that we have out. We'll see what they say and go from there, but we've looked at a couple different options and I'll give these to Tim to disseminate. In an ideal world, we'd like to get 3 into the fleet because when we get up to staffing, we're gonna have more people, more cars on the road. We don't want them operating 24/7, plus we want to get rid of.
Road patrol, what's paid is road patrol millage?
When I print it off, it's the same, should be in the same one, road patrol millage.
It's a separate. Didn't we have separate cars there too?
We got it broke out.
'Cause I only see one car in the sheriff's office budget.
Right, there's one car there and then there's one in the, so it's kind of a combined conversation as we close out the 301.
I know.
So then why are vehicle repairs 15 grand?
Based on what we saw last current year. Or this current year, and then the historical trend, we budgeted for 15,000. We have a couple of cars that, and the cost of repairing those, we had the one accident, which was covered by insurance, but then we've had a couple more major fixes that we've had to do to keep the cars on the road.
So far this year, it's down.
Hmm?
So far this year, it's down.
Quite a bit.
At the June, way down.
Right, so that's why I'm wondering why we're keeping that so high.
2/3 less.
2/3 less than 301. That's gonna change.
Thanks.
No, we have one vehicle that's gonna over $1,000 in repairs. We lost,
Okay. Even then, it's,
still gonna be down.
if
But
it,
that number is plugged in based on the historical data of the 3-4 years that we looked at
Yeah.
moving forward, and we came up with 15,000 to be safe. Not knowing what we're gonna run into.
Just want to point out the recommended number is 10,000.
better stay under that.
Well, you just pointed out that this year we're well under it, so.
Yeah.
Got a couple more
I'm
months.
looking at that,
You look
right?
at the guy in the
4,000
back row and he says, oh, it's gonna happen.
We're at 4,457 right now, right? For this,
June 30th.
I'm looking at that correctly. So I agree. I think that number needs to come down a little bit. We want less repairs, not more.
Yeah, because they'll be under warranty.
Pardon me?
You give us 3 cars, then we'll have the warranty that.
We do have, didn't we got, how many new cars we get last year? We got 2 Tahoes, they shouldn't need repairs.
No, but they're still under warranty. But if we got 3 more new ones, we're supposed to be under warranty as well.
Didn't we get some patrol cars? Didn't we get
We
a,
had 2 Tahoes, and then prior to that, we had the 2 Chargers when we first started in 2021.
yeah, so there should still
So-
be,
There's 4 out of the fleet, but we still have the Explorers, which are giving us, we've got 2 old Impalas. That the sheriff drives one, so. Budgetary wise, I think, we'd like 3, but I think that's outside unless we came up with different ways of funding it. I think 2 between the 2 budgets is feasible. again, that purchase. So the money that's in there would support two, and I will forward this information to you. It has prices for purchase, and it also has the lease option that we talked about once before. So that'll be something that down the road, the commissioners can look over and make a decision on, along with Tim, which direction you'd like to go for this fiscal year as vehicle replacement and purchases. So
When you're talking about vehicles, you're looking, what line item is that under? Is that sheriff vehicles? Is it?
sheriff vehicle combined with the 259 is how I look at it, because you're buying it through both line items for both purposes.
Is a,
So
on
it,
what page is that? Is that
bottom,
On the 301 budget that we're talking about, it's the very last line,
very last?
their vehicles.
I have-
Last line.
but we haven't
Oh,
spent
no, no,
any of
no, I
that.
know that, but I
We
mean,
have not, because the USDA grants have not
Oh,
come through. And we have not sought to purchase a vehicle on our own.
oh, it's in.
So that money is still sitting in there for this current fiscal year.
Cause you, it's,
And we don't anticipate using, much, if any of that in this current fiscal year, because the USDA grants aren't gonna come in or be paid for until after, most likely October 1st. So we're incorporating, we're not gonna have our vehicle purchases in this fiscal year that we planned.
okay, that's what I'm looking at.
So that
There's none,
money's-
correct? Cause if you had 59,343 that was, oh, it was amended to. And it looks like only 363 has been spent.
Transfer.
Right, I have not, there's been no vehicle purchase or things that were purchased that could be put under the 301 budget.
Okay,
That one is staying as is, and I anticipate that we're gonna close out this fiscal year with that being still there to move to cover other expenses. Because we didn't come and say we want to just outright buy a car, we're still waiting on the USDA grant. I just didn't,
Well, it's still.
I didn't feel that was necessary at this point, but next year, next fiscal, based on the USDA grant, still need to stay in our cycle to improve cars, to keep the fleet up to date, rotated, and safe for the deputies on the road. But I anticipate this fiscal year, that line item in 301 is gonna be pretty much that at the end of the year.
okay, I just want to make sure I was reading that right.
Yeah. And that's, again, strictly because of the USDA grant. If the grant had come through and we were anticipating delivery, say in September, then we would spend that money if it was approved for the vehicle. At this point, this late in the fiscal year, would not be able to get a vehicle before October 1st. So correct me if I'm wrong. He's been working on my cars for me while I've been doing the other stuff, so.
Right, I was just down at the dealership down there Rapids the other day. They currently have 12 Tahoes left, the 2022 Tahoes at that price. That the sheriff told you. Once those are gone, there is no more 22s. It'll be next summer before they get the 23s in. And we don't know what the price is gonna be, but if it goes like 4, then jump 10 grand. The vehicles are on the lot right now, but once, like I said, once they're gone, I, the municipality could come in right now and buy all 12. So it's time sensitive, but again, it's up to you guys, but.
So we,
Time frame comes into, but
we could potentially then spend that money in this fiscal year
we could, I mean,
if there was still a car.
if there was,
If the USDA grant comes in, there's still a vehicle sitting down there, we could snag it and
he has told me, that was guy to deal with down there. He's basically got our name on 2. Right now, he's been courtesy enough. Till next week, when I can let him know what you guys have decided or where we're gonna, what projection we're going. To whether or not he's gonna keep those 2 for us. Or not. Obviously, he can't sit on forever, he's got to
Right.
play too, but. All I can say is it may be in the best interest. to Do it quicker than sooner than later, if the trend with the Chevy goes the same as the Ford. It jumps 10 grand at the next year model. That's quite a huge jump. 20 grand per vehicle, so. Again, that's
basically. He's got them on the lot right now that can be delivered tomorrow.
I see your thought train on the costs of, when you look at the road patrol millage, we are way over on vehicle repairs. When you look at sheriff's office, we're way under. Okay, that's what you and I were talking about. Showing the sheriff's office cars, it's 2/3 less, but in the road patrol millage fund,
It's over.
2/3 over.
Yeah, and part of that is because of that crash.
Okay.
The insurance, offsetted that with the insurance. So it's not quite as over as it appears on the surface, as we did get the insurance revenue. And with the 301 budget, you're really only dealing with the 2 cars the lieutenants are driving. So when the cars that lieutenants are driving have service or repairs and stuff, that's what's charged to the 301. So it's 2 cars out of the fleet that are being charged to there. So
Well, you're only asking for the same amount of training funds as before. Sounds like more training is needed, so we don't crash as often.
we only had the 1 crash
Oh,
that last year, and we did send them to that West Branch PD training, which is gonna be an annual training that we send them to a driver refresher.
okay.
So
It was
that's-
2 years ago. There was a few.
Yeah, I
It
know.
wasn't this past year.
Well, it was a year ago that we didn't get a quote from an insurance company and they named why. And it was the sheriff's department crash. So,
Yeah, and we had to sit down with them, and then we found and we sent everybody to it. We did have another crash, unfortunately, but it's now gonna be an annual training for the deputies to keep their skills up when it comes to being out on the road driving, because they have to do it so much. So
just regular driving too, not just the fast stuff, but there's.
I don't have anything more on that.
I do have to point out,
Because the less money we spend on these other things, the more cars we can buy.
mhm, in the sheriff's part-time. I can point that 301,704, you'll see there's 20,800. That is what I proposed in the budget, and Tim has left it here for your decision, is employing deputy better as a part-time deputy. And come up with a job description, but basically it's to give him hours to assist with the grant stuff that he's been doing currently, plus helping us with our property inspection program that we established here this past year. And then fleet management is another area that he assists once Lieutenant Castleman gets off the road. So there's certain things that are built into it. So it's based on $20 an hour as per the contract for part-time deputies. And we figured find my notes.
1,040 hours,
1,040 hours.
quarterly halftime. Yeah.
Okay, yep, there it is. So it's based on $20 an hour per the contract, 52 weeks out of the year, so 20,008. Again, it's for grants, that property checks to assist with some civil service or civil paper service. And basically some administrative help around the office.
Could he do, what's 911 doing for us? What's that called?
Warrant entries,
Huh?
Lean it, yeah.
warrant entries? No, he's not. That wouldn't work. Yeah, no,
Please?
Would pay for it.
it would pay for it. Well,
Well, we're being charged to.
Quite a bit of money.
$25. You have our old budget up there? How much have we paid this year? I don't remember. Lean.
Lean entry.
Let's see.
We just seen him on this past claims and it was,
That wasn't out of their budget though.
Your budget at 500.
Processing fees, Well, it was $2,000, 500 so far this year.
They used to do it. The sheriff's office always used to
Projecting
do it.
650 for the year.
And then they lost a secretary or something, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure. Did we do that?
Yeah,
What, entry warrants through at the sheriff's office?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Always did. Always did.
up until the last
But-
couple years, 2
The
years.
big ones that you're talking, well, this last time was district court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The expenditures for the sheriff's office for lien entries is less than $1,000, I think, total for the whole year so far.
It's went way
It
down.
is so far this year.
It's went way down because really the warrants that we're getting are felonies. And then only certain misdemeanors because everything else with the law changes, you're not generating a misdemeanor warrant that has to be, now it's summons.
Well-
Dates and that type of stuff, so.
Jenny's asking if you did it. I think she's willing to give you more money than we're.
Say that. I was surprised.
If you would do it, if you would have said yes. I think she was in favor of paying whatever extra it would take, to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree with that, but again, that would
That would
also,
have been more than we're got in this other line.
But I think that's also a 24-hour deal.
Yeah,
Because when they come in,
No, it's not. There wasn't a sheriff, there wasn't
No.
somebody over in that
No,
office.
because the courts used to do their own and they didn't work 24 hours
Yeah.
a day.
yeah,
No.
don't, isn't
No.
it if you stop somebody on the road at night, don't they?
They could enter that the next day. We had that explained to
We
us.
had all this stuff. Yeah. The sheriff's office didn't do it for the whole county. The courts did their own and the courts don't work 24 hours a day.
I'm also surprised by this with us hopefully being up to staff soon, that this overtime, and again, I'm still just shocked by this amount of overtime, and I know it happens and I understand all that, and we don't always have control over it, but I think that overtime line, you have it even higher next year than what we're looking at this year. You're looking at 30,000. Am I looking at that correctly?
in the 259, are we talking
301.
the 301?
Yeah, I guess
Is that related to lieutenants doing the field? Is that where that was?
No,
Because in this department, we have the two of you, we have the lieutenants, we have the clerical, right?
Mhm.
No one else?
no. It's just the two lieutenants, yeah, it's and the clerical, so there's 2, 4.
so. Then why the
I
overtime?
missed the-
The clerical probably not getting the overtime, which gets me down to the two lieutenants. The two of you are exempt, so you're not.
We don't get overtime.
So I've got two people accounting for that amount.
$30,000?
Hey, you want to make them happy.
Well, no. Yeah, 30,000.
The deputies would get.
I think that needs to be cut in half.
But that would be that'd be for the two.
Well, this has always been a sore subject about deputies are making more money than me.
I thought, no, I mean, honestly, I
So,
didn't realize only two people were
In order to
falling under
make
there.
that difference, I gotta pay you overtime.
That's too much.
Yeah, the two lieutenants. We're
I
getting
mean-
paid at a higher level, but I think maybe we should go back and look at that, Tim. I wouldn't disagree.
They have control over their schedule, correct?
Currently, no,
extent.
to an extent, and we would expect that next year, when we get to the staffing levels and hit that some of that overtime that they're currently doing, having to work the road in a full capacity at 12 hours would not be there because they wouldn't be staying for complaints, shift coverage, that type of thing that they're currently doing. So I think that's a valid point that Tim, maybe we should go back at the historical data and look at changing that a little bit. I do. That's because it's only the two people.
Yeah.
And again, but enough said. A valid point on that. Because I did up it anticipating there was gonna be more overtime. But I didn't take in the fact that there's only two.
Save some money, buy you another car.
There you
Maybe a tire.
go. One.
4, you get 4 out of that.
Are
Is
we,
there anything else in the 301 that's other than that? So the salaries are pretty fixed, and that's the two lieutenants. The overtime, we'll take a look at that again. The equipment up, and the vehicle purchase. So 259. 10 deputies.
So 259 will be in the special fund recommendations. Get you a page number in just a second.
Yeah, I got it right here. Tell me the page.
You okay?
Good. My temperature is 97, so I'm good. Check it on the way in.
Page 7 of 20.
720,
Everybody there?
Yep.
So the wages are fixed in the 10, which again, I'm very pleased with that. We get to that number, we're gonna be comfortable as far as staffing levels and what we need to do the operations, the overtime, 45,000. Again, we would hope that we would see a downturn of that when we reach the staffing goals that we're trying to get to, but some of the stuff is gonna be outside of our control as we learn. We had a couple injuries
And I don't think as an average of $4,500 per body, that's an outrageous amount of considering for overtime. Given the hourly rate. I think that's totally reasonable
Say that again, Commissioner Serbrook?
for having 10 people. That $45,000 equates to $4,500 per individual. And I don't think that that is,
Astronomical.
no, it's not. It's reasonable. That's what I'm trying to say. $4,500 per is reasonable.
I understand and I respect what you're saying, but again, with us being at a better staffing level, I wouldn't expect that number to go up. I would expect that number to go down.
Got so many variables in there that, I mean, all of this is your best guess, quite frankly. We can't predict the price of gas tomorrow, and I'm just saying gas.
No, we're talking about.
I know you're talking over, I know
More
what you're talking
control
about.
over Overtime than
You can't predict what's gonna happen. Heaven forbid, two deputies could
I
be
understand
injured at the
that.
same time, and now you gotta take and fill it with overtime. It's you cannot predict overtime costs. You can predict your fixed cost, but your overtime cost, you cannot predict. It's a wild card.
I don't, I hear you and I
Yeah,
don't
but
disagree with
there's
you.
Only so much money we can pay out.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's
Gotta
unreasonable.
set a budget.
I just said, I don't believe it's unreasonable.
I just would have thought again that that number just would have went down versus up because hopefully our staffing level and we can make adjustments as that kind of stuff
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah, we might have a critical incident too, where we got a barricaded gun or anything,
That's an exception.
you know, that would produce more overtime.
Given the hourly rate that they're at now, because we did give them substantial wage increases.
That's fixed.
But I'm saying that reflects on the overtime cost then.
How? They're fixed. Oh, I see. Never mind. Forget I said that. Never mind.
If you look at what they spent this past fiscal year in overtime with the wage increase, I'm just saying that they're.
Understandable. My only argument again is that staffing levels being better. I mean, we had a rough year last year with training and trying to get night patrol up and going. And so I anticipated those numbers being higher. Now this year, I would have thought those numbers would be better.
It's a perfect year.
Pardon me?
If it's a perfect year.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I'm figuring. If it's $4,500 per slot. And I divided that by $30 an hour, which would be an overtime rate, right?
Pretty close. probably.
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Mhm.
That's 150 hours left. So 150 hours overtime per officer per year. Is that right? Is that what I'm figuring? So is that 3 hours a week overtime?
Basically.
Okay, can you keep it under 150 per officer?
Gonna do our best.
Well, I mean, one guy's,
Sounds like we're an
one
answer.
guy's gone, so the other guy gets his hours, right?
Yep.
Just the unseen.
No, this,
And then you're on midnight, so get a week long curfew.
no, this includes this comp time
Right.
stuff we keep talking about too. This comp time's in this figure too.
No, it's not.
Cause you
Well,
get,
it's overtime
you
pay.
get a bill.
Well, what line in this budget is comp time?
Comp time comes out of straight pay.
But we pay it in overtime.
Comp time comes out of
Replacement pay.
salary.
It's calculated at an overtime rate.
Calculated as time and a half, but it's paid out of the salary line item, because it's paid, so you work an hour over, you convert it to comp time, you get 1.5 hours, but when it's paid out, when they use it, it's paid at the regular rate, which comes out of the salary line.
Times 0.5 of the hours that they work. So they work 40 hours, they work 10 hours over. You compute it to 15 hours then. And then pay it at regular pay at 15 hours.
I lost it.
Well, that was your spreadsheet yesterday. You converted whatever hours they worked,
1 hour.
hours, then 1.5
Mhm.
to what they earned. And then there was a column which you paid.
What they used, that was just straight time. That's the
So they
comp.
only used
I
the
was
10
showing.
hours, they didn't use the 15?
What I showed you in there was the first column was the hours that were worked. Yep. The second hour. The second column is what the comp time conversion was. The
Converted to.
third one is when the comp time was burned. So he
And they-
used that, and took time off.
Okay, so did he use what he earned or what he worked?
What he earned. The earned is
Earned.
what's burned.
Right, so
Correct.
so you take what he worked and times it by 0.5.
Mhm.
And instead of saying that I'm paying him 10 hours of regular time, I'm paying him 15 hours of regular time.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm on board now.
Okay. So he only worked 10, but I'm gonna pay him for 15.
He's gonna use that as leave time, correct? That
Okay.
comes out of the salary line item,
And that comes out of wages.
not the overtime line item.
All right. All right,
So then that's not necessarily a fixed.
then we're gonna be able to stay at the wages line then. Okay, then.
Yes.
Okay.
Tim, is that why your number is so much different than what was
Sure.
recommended on the wages line? You were 486,000 and their estimate is 435,726.
Don't know what formula Paul used. I used the actual numbers, so plugged in the deputies that we have. I know what their rates are and so on, plugged all that in, but we have, what's it, 1 or 2 open positions right now. In those cases, I say worst case that I maximized it. So we do have our formula in there. If we hire somebody in with so much seniority, we bump them up. I assume we bumped them up. So my number should be too high. But if we have an opportunity to hire somebody in at that higher rate that has that training, that's what we would cost out. And the same is true with the health insurance. I suspect my number is high, but I'm assuming we're going to hire somebody in that needs the full family coverage. Plug that in. I assume they're going to want the 7% match on the DC. Plug that in. I'm surprised at how many of our employees don't do the 7%, but I worst case it, because that's what we said we would pay to the max. So we should already have a fund balance kind of built into that. But if we have the perfect year and the perfect candidates come along and they want the max on the DC, we're covered.
I just want to continue. I gotta take like a 2-minute break. Does anybody else need a break?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
I didn't ask. I mean, I'm,
Oh,
that's I kind of did.
okay.
I'm gonna take a fast.
You don't, all right. Yeah, 2-minute break is fine. Matter of fact, I could take a 3-minute break. I walk slower.
Or does it just assume?
It will still be due next election. And we'll do like we did with them.
Oh, I changed the brakes on my wife's
The max.
car last night. We came down on the ground and
No gains for it now.
nothing yet.
What, 320?
No, but
Or whatever it is.
this.
Said we would. elected to, but it's subject to the Headley rollback each of those
I
years.
think we have,
Then we have another election, we put the 1 mil or whatever it was.
and I don't know how to do that.
Then we can plug the mill again, but then it's gonna start rolling
That
back
was the
again.
canvassers, the canvasser part. It says
Oh, you're talking
if
about,
all of the following are true.
yes, when that appropriations resolution, I showed you all the villages.
That's the truth,
Back.
but this right
So the budget is based on that.
Yes.
And
here.
when we can't,
Seven.
we're at 10 officers with that whole millage. Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we were.
Now, as I mentioned to Paul,
And I don't
the
know.
way the taxable values are going up here,
Well,
a year or two, we might be able to afford the 11, just because of the
here's my
tax base.
personal,
So that's, I mean, potential without doing anything.
if
We could add number.
that petition fails.
So that's just the bid and then what Debbie better put together for your review. We currently have like, between the two, we have 114,000. This change budget. You'd have to come up with an additional 10 if we outright purchase the two Tahoes. We've got some ideas on how to hit that third one. Maybe we find a military vehicle or something, and then we can put the protected vehicle back in the regular.
Right.
So we've got some ideas.
Well, at least for 3 years.
We don't have to really throw out, again, depending on what USDA says. If they come in with the pickup truck, police vehicle,
And we had the animal control vehicle in that mix too, didn't we?
We did.
USDA.
we did,
So
so
if they fund part of that, then we can put some ARPA money.
move stuff around depending on what, because we got 4 proposed.
It's just sitting.
Yeah.
We got the pickup truck for the sheriff's office, the patrol vehicle, animal control USDA, the jail. So depending on what we get on
Yeah, right.
16th, then we can sit down and readjust that. But those are some numbers as they stand right now. So I think we can hit our fleets without too much problems this coming fiscal year. And
Right.
if we could even squeeze one in, this one, then we are really sitting well going into the next year. So, and that overtime in 301, it didn't even.
I just
did it
assumed.
historical and I didn't really sit there and overanalyze if we hit our goals.
Okay.
Yeah, I just assumed that it was,
For the regular meeting.
had to do with the field training,
Yeah, it's
the extra time that was being spent out there. So, yeah.
because 2 now we've got
Yeah. She's
got
just,
an FTO
we just put it in the house and.
in the deputy ranks and we're sending a second FTO
You're pop
out of the regular ranks here so fall.
Mhm.
So the incoming are gonna be able to not have to rely on lieutenants for the FTO. Where the deputies will be doing the FTO, and we'll get lieutenants back in and start doing the administrative case review stuff. We need to
Gosh.
get back on track to where things are supposed to be going, so. But
Like to say the evil plan's coming together.
it's,
We were thinking early on that we were hoping that, finally we would through all of the building of the plane stage and now we're just gonna fly next year.
yeah, it's, I don't wanna jinx anything, but
You know why? Because you bought it.
it's getting a little easier to visualize and then
Mhm.
plug in. I think this year is gonna be easier to manage as far as hitting benchmarks.
Yeah.
I hope.
Right.
But even at this point last year, we weren't completely sure where we were even with our health insurance. In fact, it was this time last year, we found out the Teamsters canceled our guys. Really had chaos.
I got it. Settle for the.
What? There was some yesterday.
I'm cold.
It's freezing in here.
I got another cup, so I might have to take another break.
I'm going to get one. Do you have coffee? Did that come from your office?
Yeah,
Is there any more?
Paul, do you want a cup of coffee?
is Is
Keep
there
you
really
awake.
more in there?
It was yesterday.
I think you're doing a fine job.
It was,
The coffee is day old coffee, but is there more in there?
Yeah, there's a little more.
It's
Yeah.
Dale.
Yeah, there's more in there.
I just,
Day old, you turned right around. I saw that.
I know.
I threw it in the microwave.
So good.
Okay.
She brought mine in and it was.
Cold.
Oh,
You can warm it up?
It's hot.
Yeah, they must have turned.
Must have
the
made
burner on
it
it.
hot.
She made mine.
It was day old this morning. I just threw it in the microwave.
do you have to leave it now?
If I want to be back here by 1 for that service over there.
Our office is always that cold, that's why we have heaters. They have a heater going in the office.
It's freezing in here.
Oh, well, I'll take something out of the budget to get that heater going.
Thanks.
How's extension cord, Craig?
Thanks for the support.
Oh, you got the floor.
Come on, the fund. The millage budget, was there any questions? Like, we're getting down towards the tail end of it. The equipment, we talked about vests again. Some replacement vests, and we're gonna have to buy new vests for the new employees as they come aboard. And that's for the uniforms too. We hope as we get staffed and that uniforms numbers can come down. Maybe looking forward, because now we're just doing replacements as buying full type of gear. Did we, lien processing fees, we don't even have any 259.
So there's a pretty significant variance from your vehicle purchase of 55,000 and Paul, you have 75,000. What was your proposal there, Tim?
To balance with the revenue that's coming in. But I appreciate too that we are probably over, like I said, with the wages. If we use the 301 number that you gave us, which was closer to about 60,000, not mistaken. But what were these numbers that you gave me for a vehicle, what a single unit? What's the price?
40,000 something.
Yeah. So on
That's the
the,
current.
yeah, then the other costs are for the
Equipment,
decals and
equipment.
so on. Actually, I'm pretty comfortable with the 55 if we're talking one.
Sure. Depending on the USDA grant too coming in, that could offset even more, there's quite a few factors to that.
Drop that one a bit.
But I'd leave it at the 55 right now, and then we'll see how this plays. And like I said, with some of the personnel expenses, I've maxed it out, so we know that we have more budget in there than what we're gonna need. So by the time we need to adjust the budget, we'll have a real better picture of what that's gonna be and make our adjustment accordingly.
And to that point, we do have the one deputy that is on deployment, so he is still on our books. But he is not drawing any salary, any type of expenses because he's deployed. And we don't expect him back until late spring at the earliest.
All right.
So,
6 months into next year.
yeah, so with the cushion that he's built in, and we know for a fact, we can say that this deputy is not gonna be drawing salary, so there's gonna be some room in that salary line item.
You have to hold this position, correct?
Correct.
That's your guys' only responsibility there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
He is one of the.
We do.
Yeah, he's one of the 10. So, for staffing right now, he's a hole that we have to fill out on the road to keep going. But on the flip side, he's not drawing any money from the budget either, so. As things develop, we're still gonna have a little bit more of a cushion on that salary line.
You probably don't know, was it a yearly? For him, to come back 6 months and get sent again?
Could.
Good.
Depending on what's going on with his
Yeah.
unit.
I know I had that with one of my firefighters years ago. He was gone for 6 months, here for 6 months, gone for 6 months.
Well, it's the same that you hire another officer that's in the guard or something, or reserve. What happened?
Is there anything else?
The only other one would be the training line item. You'll see there's 20,000 in there. That would be for the 2 sponsored recruits coming from corrections to help us meet our staffing goals. I'm happy to say that just this morning, as I sat down, that we received an email from Michigan Works that indicates that one of the two correction officers has been approved for funding.
Yay. Good
It's
job.
Still dependent on the Pell grant. We're still waiting to see if he has any Pell money that might go towards his schooling. But like I said, I'm very happy to say that Michigan Works is going to work with us, and as indicated, Gene said in an email that the one qualifies and that the second one is still waiting for paperwork, so we might know by Tuesday, hopefully, whether the second one is gonna meet. Here it is.
Tim, can we put that as a revenue line?
Michigan Works
We've
is,
been pretty
Successful.
successful in getting these in grant money. Can we put that on a revenue expectation?
Pretty successful isn't my comfortable level.
Okay, oh, really?
Sign documents saying. here's-
Because they're pretty sure they're gonna stay within the budget and they want us to believe that. I don't know.
Do you want to go ahead and read that email?
it just says, it has been approved for funding, so they're waiting for the federal Pell grant. Any funding, but the amount that they're gonna fund is gonna based on what the Pell grant says. But it says he has been approved for funding.
Just moving, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's right. We have a window that we could send this one in the August school. With that funding, and we would have him on the road in the training in December, so that would be one of the 3 openings. And if the second one qualifies, then we would be able to send 2 of them, and we would not have to use any or most of that 20,000 would be able to be adjusted. The final budget.
Any training or any, Michigan Works is a great resource that I don't think people utilize enough. So any training you guys have, corrections has, definitely stay in contact with them, because I sit on their board and they have a lot to offer,
Uh,
and they have a lot of funding, a lot of money.
A lot of, well, and they work really hard.
They have a great group of people over there. They have a great board too.
You know, I can't thank Jean enough for what she does and how she's went through this process. So we have this window that 20,000 could be moved for the vehicles and that type of thing. And we might even have that answer before this budget's finalized. So that would be awesome. And like I said, we'd hit our staffing by spring, barring attrition or any other type of thing. We're gonna be, as we said, moving forward, be in a good place to be given the services.
I'll say I am worried about attrition. And I say that because I'm getting calls from other counties that want copies of our contracts, which they're now using in their negotiations to compete with. So the whole cycle starts over again. So
You're worried about
I'm-
what?
attrition. I'm worried about other counties poaching our deputies.
And if we can get up to staffing, then we can start planning for the attrition. And we know we're gonna have some. We know we've got retirements coming up in 2.5 to 3.5 years. Could lose 1 or 2 to other departments, as Tim said. But if we can get to this point this spring where we're staffed to our expectations here, then we can switch our planning to attrition, where we're prepared to plug people in as people leave, or at least have a game plan that we can do, so we don't fall into a situation again where we're 2, 3 short, scrambling with overtime and stuff. So if this plan comes together by this spring, start switching gears and start planning for attrition and the other type of stuff. But right now, I like these budgets, these numbers. There's a few tweaks. There could be some additional tweaks depending on how this plays out here in the next 3 to 5 days.
Well,
We'll
what
bring
you
that-
asked and what the administrator is recommending is $50,000 over what you asked.
I know.
That's pretty good.
My objective with the budget was to create a realistic budget
Good.
and work together with him.
I like
as
the
opposed-
realistic plans you're explaining. I
Yeah.
like it. I like it.
That's. You know, if we need something, we'll come and ask for it with an explanation why, obviously, but
Absolutely.
I think these are very good numbers that are put into. I think they're manageable, and I think we can hit most, if not all, the goals. That's what we'll be shooting for. The only other ones, then I don't, how much we want to go over them. You've got the school resource officers. We developed that budget based on the 75. Both of them are identical. And it covers the 8-hour days, 5 days a week. Pretty basic, just to have that officer with the schools.
I was surprised by that. I truly, and it's, I'm sure my fault. I truly thought that 75 grand was the total cost. It's gonna cost the county between 20 to 25,000 for each officer. Am I looking at that correctly?
For the first one.
The first one,
Which
for
I
the,
looked at it once.
for the Whittemore, we're actually $4 to the good.
What page are you on?
It's like 25 of 42
Darn it.
in the general fund now, not the dedicated funds.
So they're not
So-
distinguished between Whittemore and West.
There, and we actually broke them out. So we've got one that's for Ogemaw Heights, and we have one for Whittemore, just so we can keep track of both of them with the contracts. So one of them is 303, the other one's 304. The 303 truly is a factor of the seniority of the officer that's assigned there. You'll see the retirement cost at 12,000. That's a reflection of the defined benefit plan, which you don't see in the Whittemore. It's 3,785. Okay, so that's part of the difference. Again, it's just the seniority and
Are you talking medical costs, basically, is where?
health insurance, depending on what's taken.
Yeah.
But we know for sure on the Ogemaw Heights one, what that plan looks like. But the big one is that retirement, and this drives home the reason why you went to the defined contribution plan.
Yeah,
It's a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But we have obligations and we meet those,
Both of those officers are available for road patrol in the summertime.
Exactly.
That would-
We've got them 3 months out of the year.
No added medical. That's already covered under that budget.
And it's there.
So there's value there for us.
Definitely.
Usually during the summer months when businesses.
That's that's why we don't want to contract.
I put my glasses on. Hi.
Then we have
Sorry.
all that cost.
Okay.
Good with the school resource officers? Yep. Wherever you have your 3 basic grants that we're submitting for or going through your marine, ORV and snowmobile bubble. Oh, we built the budgets based on the previous year's grant awards and we'll adjust accordingly as they're awarded. So 5,000 for the snowmobile, 10,000 for the ORV. And the marine is 10,700. And again, that's the 6,700 that the grant pays for and the additional 4,000 that the board gave towards that. So the budgets are pretty much identical for marine. Well, it'd be for what this fiscal year is and then what's proposed for next year. That would be then the board awarding that $4,000 again for next year. So that would be a point of discussion with the Marine this year. And that also would be dependent then, like this year, we won't know. We will go back up to 8,700 next year's. So that could fluctuate and change midterm once that's awarded, but that budget is built off of 6,700 that we received this year, plus the 4,000 the board put into the Marine Fund for operations, subject to change. Other than that, there's the road patrol,
Secondary
the secondary road patrol, and just submitted for our 2023 funding. That was that contract that you signed. There was a change in law with that. It's no longer based on
The $5 surcharge.
the ticket revenue and then criminal, it's now, the money is coming out of the liquor license law stuff, so it's more, there's no fluctuation to the numbers and everything, so they still haven't finalized exactly how much money is going to each county municipality, but it is more fixed as far as how much revenue is going to be available to disseminate to the counties as the previous system, which fluctuated based on tickets and arrests and that type of thing. So the legislation did make that change, and I think we should see some positive, more steady numbers with the road patrol moving forward, with the MSA getting that accomplished along with the legislator. The road patrol is built on our maintaining that and receiving the assistance from the grant.
I would just recommend watching the costs prior to this administration. This thing has gone out of control, because past administration come in and say, oh, we're paid for it. Well, it's $50,000 over what we get. I mean, it was way back in 1981, it was, but as costs went up, it didn't. And I remember the one meeting and people are going, really? Really? It costs more? Yeah, it costs a lot more, so like overtime, you're showing overtime for secondary road patrol. I would think accounting wise, you'd want to put that in to the other one where the secondary guy is not getting that, or, you know what I mean? It's just an accounting thing.
Commissioner
But
Serbrook?
you can't, you've got one officer that's dedicated to secondary road.
But if he
And-
does another job though, if he got on a
But
freeway,
the overtime is a result of his secondary road assignment.
well then.
So the overtime needs to be in the secondary road budget.
That's why.
Where are we at with ticket revenue?
Why would he
Where's-
have overtime?
Of course, OWI, Russ.
Every ticket he writes his job.
Well,
Did that go up this year? I would think with 24-hour road patrol, did ticket revenue go up? It didn't?
No.
Come on, Paul. Tell him here. Where are we?
Ticket revenue goes to the courts. It doesn't come to the.
Oh, we write them.
Don't write tickets for revenue. No.
I understand we don't. I just want to see what the expected, if it went up.
You'd see it in district court revenue. It's not sheriff's revenue. That money all goes.
I'm asking wherever it is on here, I don't care. Did it go up?
District court.
district court,
So what page?
I don't know what page district court's on.
I think so.
But it's just our revenue.
Okay,
17,
let's see.
Yeah.
You see my point?
17,
We have 24-hour road patrol now.
right,
Okay, where are we?
would be up in statute, ordinance, fines, costs. It's up in revenue.
I'm on that page.
The statute costs, right?
What?
It was 450.
Office lien
Wow, it's
processing
over now.
fees?
No,
Nope, it's district court statute cost, it says, it's
I think it's statute cost.
bottom.
Okay, so theirs is at 100 and, so it did not go up. We're at 107,000.
And we
No, you're
expected 250.
Wow.
Yeah, the expectation was 250 and so
We're only
far
at
for 9
107?
months, it's 107.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that's a reflection of all the law enforcement within the
Right.
county, so that's.
Yeah, that's everybody.
So we're looking at dropping that expectation down.
That's a question for district court as to why they projected their revenues.
Can we ask them that?
Bring them down to the next.
Because there's a $20,000 difference from what they put in there and what you put in there.
So you'll notice on the year-to-date through June 30th, they were at almost 108.
Mhm.
So just doing projections, I project they'll be at about 170, and I expect that would actually accelerate a little bit from what the trend was for the balance of the year.
$35,000 quarter.
We had budgeted the 250. for this year, and we're not gonna meet that. I mean, it's one of the adjustments that we made yesterday.
Mhm.
They recommended the 150. I think that's a little lower than what they're gonna end up with at the end of next year. But yeah, we can certainly bring them in. In fact, your next meeting.
Can we get a better breakdown of what all that is again? And that used to be a very, very detailed conversation. And I just would have thought again that that number would go up. I know you guys aren't the only ones, but there's 24-hour road patrol out there, and I would hope there's being more arrests or
Tickets,
ticketing. What,
this is an arrest.
okay? Ticketing.
Right, yeah,
I'm happy with
the
it.
meeting in 2 weeks.
I'm happy with it, seeing it go down.
They're not out there to generate revenue.
That's right. Then the county didn't go broke when we stopped writing tickets on the
Community
freeway,
policing,
like we heard.
deterring crime.
Yeah, we heard Chicken Little told. us
Right, but
that
there's
we're
still
gonna go
crime out
broke if
there.
we didn't
Oh, there's
do this.
definitely-
So, I mean, you gotta see kind of,
301 complaints in July, so
so there has to be some ticketing there.
well, not
Oh,
necessarily.
I don't know.
No,
Not necessarily, that's complaints.
Okay.
Anything else?
In complaints, you still gotta
How'd
catch
you do,
them.
Paul? How'd you do?
How'd I do?
Yeah,
Pretty good about it.
okay.
I think it's a very good budget that we can operate with. I think we're getting to where we need to be.
It wasn't too terrible
Well, I'm
sitting in
glad
that hot seat, was it?
communication's
We had fun with it.
getting better and I like it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I like it too.
Just keep coming back up.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great
Sirs.
day.
there's nothing else.
See you later. Tim, what else?
One
circuit court is down $100,000 this year on expenditures as well.
Yeah, that's one of the adjustments we made yesterday too, on the expenses, is to draw that one down. That was a big one. I don't know the reason.
What's the central services all include?
Can we ask the reason? Can they come in and explain it to us?
Well, they may not know either. They may, because this is probably just based on caseload. And maybe not as many cases they're dealing with.
I thought
Central
people
services is
high.
that whole thing with Roscom.
Yeah, I think that's
They've got,
what we
they-
pay out to them.
yeah, we pay that to Roscommon because they manage the entire
So that was down.
operation.
$1,000 alone. Right there. So far this year, we're at $77,000 versus budgeted $130,000.
And when historically, it's been budgeted high too. So again, I don't know what their thinking is on, the details of it. I'm budgeting based on what I see on the trend. But they again may be budgeting for a worst case scenario of the number of cases they have to deal with and how many hours of court reporter service they need and all that. That does tend to add up. So that could be it, but I'm just guessing.
Well, I can tell you for the time I've been here, a lot of budgets were inflated to start with, and they never overspent them.
If we don't need it, we won't spend it, right?
Well, they didn't overspend them.
That's what I heard from at least one.
Yeah, and it was deficit going in. It was almost close to break even coming out.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks,
You
Brad.
didn't bite on it.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Tim, was there anything else that you wanted to draw our attention to?
Not in the budget. I had meant to include the budget calendar, but at this point, the only thing that's left is to actually, schedule the hearing. We'll do it. That happens in September, so nothing we need to even concern ourselves with right now. I do want to make sure that we get whatever additional information you want. So I will get a hold of district court. I'll have them in at the next meeting, since we don't have committee of the whole. So it'll be that following Thursday to talk about the breakdown on their revenue. And if there's anybody else you'd like to come in to talk about any detail, just let me know. We'll call them and ask them to get in here.
So do we need to talk about these wage increases that are on here too? I mean,
You can, again, this is what's programmed into the budget, but it is up to the board.
would you guys like to have a conversation at the next committee of the whole? Would you like to continue it now?
Oh, right now, it's time to do it. Which are you're talking about?
There's, these are wage increases for every, I don't,
No, it shouldn't.
You're talking about the resolutions?
Yeah,
Okay,
Those are non-union wage increases, though,
Correct.
right?
correct.
Because we can't just. go
elected officials and elected officials, all the other ones and us.
Mhm.
This is a window right now. We cannot increase our salary when we're in term.
Correct.
We have to do it for the next term. So this is the window to do it. Otherwise, you're gonna have to wait 2 years. And the same with,
On,
no,
I'm not either.
okay, okay. What, you wanna build in a retirement for yourself or something?
I definitely agree with increasing the canvassers. How much were they making? Half day and full day?
Less than this.
40, what
I
is
just want to see
it?
1600.
45 and
Yeah, they were.
45
Okay,
and
so
40 and
I
75.
mean, that's a long day for those
Something like
people
that.
there.
Yeah.
You know, it's explained to me that the statute changed or something, particularly toward canvassers,
The what?
a statute, something at the state level that allows them to be separated, or something.
Oh, is that what
I'm
Dale
not
was
quite
telling you?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he told me something about
I'm
it,
not
but
sure
I,
he's a Democrat, I can't sure, I can believe.
And then there's this is only a 2% increase for the, am I reading that correctly, for the elected officials? And then the commissioners, what is the percentage wage increase there? 2% as well?
I want to double check to make sure
That looks more than that.
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. I brought this up to, I'll take credit for it or blame for it either way. I brought it up to him. I mean, it's been a number of years since we switched from and got rid of the healthcare. Because that was one of the things when I came in, commissioners got healthcare. And we took the healthcare off and increased the salary lines. We took a look at surrounding counties and went less than most of the surrounding counties on commissioner salaries. And I know that there were some people here in the county building said, you're not saving that much money. But the emphasis was to take the healthcare away from part-time commissioners that part-time employees did not get a chance to get. It wasn't so much in how much we were making, it was how much part-time. We increased, when I first came here, it was one committee as the whole meeting for the month. We increased that and we didn't pay it per diem. We don't get a per diem for our regular meetings. So I felt that now's the time. We've been 4 years into the system and I think any commissioner deserves more. There's a lot of stuff that we do that people don't realize we do. And how much time you spend toward everything. All these township meetings, they cut out township per diems years ago.
Right.
If you look back over the last 20 years, what things they took away from commissioners, they used to get mileage to go to township meetings, mileage to come to, for you guys that live so far away. I don't live that far, but, but they used to get mileage to come to meetings. They cut that out. They used to get per diems at the meetings. They cut that out. And the commissioners have, whatever past commissioners have cut back to save money for this county. Well, I think it's time just commissioners get a little increase here. This isn't a lot of money.
Yeah, in the past, I had voted, I had voted no on that, but I agree with you. And it's even gonna be more with the redistricting, like I lose Mills Township now, but pick up 2 other ones.
And with gas prices going up.
It's a lot of time.
It's costing more money.
I agree. It is a
the
lot of
new
time.
commissioner has 6.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Rose City.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other new one has 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1.
Hey,
So it's gonna be,
We're not even, and that's not to say, we're not obligated to go to township.
I have
meetings.
6 too, with the village.
you do. Oh, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
We're not obligated to go to township meetings at all,
Yeah, but if you don't,
Well,
you
we
hear
do.
about it.
but we do. I know,
I go quarterly. I
but,
don't think that
but the thing is,
wage
just to come to
increases
the,
are bad, but I think that, if you want commissioners to attend all of these other meetings, there needs to be a per diem added to that.
What other meetings are you talking, we're going to?
Township, other committee meetings where you gotta drive to get to them. I think that would be, both,
Well, other
You,
committees.
it would,
you can get a per diem for your committee meetings, your
Yeah.
standing committee meetings.
I'm just saying, include the townships in it.
But
I haven't did that in like a year and a half.
I
I
have.
I've been charged for committee meetings since the first month I was in term.
don't know if any of us are,
I do.
huh?
I do.
I have, and I'm
You-
going to.
You deserve to, you know.
I drive a long ways.
I,
Right, you deserve to.
Gas costs.
It's just a preference if you do it or don't, but the thing is just for the 4 regular meetings that we got a month, you're driving 30 miles round trip. So
oh, easily.
gas has gone up.
Well, and we-
There's no mileage for it,
Should be,
should come in salaries.
that should be a mandatory type of meeting for you. So that would just be included in your regular salary. So if you wanted to increase that a little bit, which I think we did already, that's understandable. But those other meetings that you don't necessarily have to go to, and if you want that type of attendance, then I think they should be compensated for.
You're talking about township meetings or our committee meetings?
Township meetings, yeah,
I mean, my comment to
or
the,
special meetings, you know.
my comment to the township was, because I had a couple ladies that were saying, well, you never show up to the township meetings. And I said, I come quarterly. I said, that Zoom is on every meeting. I've not seen not one of you, nor any of the township people on the Zoom. I think there's one gal from Rose City that shows up there. How many of you seen come through the door to sit in this meeting? They don't care. So why should I worry about going to the township meetings but quarterly? That's
Hey.
where I'm at.
And it is,
If you feel strong about, it, we'll ask the administrator to write up a resolution for the next regular meeting.
For what?
For diems, for meetings, for
for
commission.
township meetings.
Oh, that'll be a lot. That'll be a
Yeah.
lot that not anticipated for this budget. Again, I
Well,
have six. I
I-
have 6 a month.
I'll tell you what, I go along with Brad. Please, Tim, please write a resolution.
Yeah, we're still discussing
We'll
it.
vote for it. We'll vote on it.
So,
Well, you heard.
so my township, I hear you guys. I don't disagree with you, but my townships are right around the corner. I don't drive too far. But is it time? Absolutely. Logan Township can literally be 2 hours. And so most of the time I leave after 2 hours. Because it's 9 o'clock at night. They start at 7.
I got meetings that start at 7:30. I get it.
It is more time consuming than I ever imagined.
You
Tell
had,
you what.
you had an 8 o'clock, didn't you?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
at the village.
I leave from home and go to Rose City, and I leave from Rose City, drive all the way out to Goodar,
Right.
and then home for one night.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll wait for the part of the meeting that says motions for adoption and I'll bring it up then.
I didn't say we weren't. We're still discussing.
Okay.
I guess, what's your thoughts on it, Commissioner Serbrook?
Per diems for townships? No.
Because,
It's up to each individual commissioner whether they want to go or not. Some of us feel
So if you
that,
don't go, you don't get it.
exactly, but why should you be rewarded for what should be your job if that's what you want to do?
It's not your job.
Well,
I feel like it is. I do, and I feel like it is.
I feel,
That's to me, it's where this compensation is also part of.
I agree that it's not our job, but I feel it's my obligation.
That's fair.
In my position as a commissioner, I feel it's my obligation, okay? That's totally on me.
I don't. disagree with what
And I don't think that commissioners should be compensated for going to township meetings, period, or city.
How is a township meeting any different really than a committee meeting?
Like airport.
And why get paid for those if you feel it's your obligation? You signed up for it.
This is a valid conversation. I want to hear everybody's opinion. I
I don't know, I guess in my mind, there's just always been that
differential.
line of distinction.
I think it.
Do I have a rational thought behind? it? Probably not. Other than the fact that that's just historically the way I have thought. And the way this board is operated.
Historically, they used to give it per diem for it. and mileage.
What is your,
Recent history.
this kind of stuff?
You were around that long.
Oh, I know.
It's typically the way you're doing it right now. If it's a county board committee or you're assigned to the airport committee or whatever, those are eligible. But the others, the township meetings, the service club meetings, so on, are pretty much individual discretion and not compensated. But that's not across the board. Some of them do. Some of them will do the township meetings and are collecting per diems and mileage for them in some counties. Now, I caution, I won't even caution because you're not talking about it. So I'm going to assume you're not going to do it. It's just, if you go there, I will hit the stop button, but.
Go where? You don't want to go there.
Right.
Okay.
You don't want to go to the per diems, you don't want to go to the mileage.
Mileage. Let's not talk about that
No.
because you're not doing it. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Vaughn, did you have an opinion?
No, I don't.
You have one. I mean, that's,
So I told you what I do, what mine is. I go quarterly. I figure quarterly, they're getting the information that I'm getting out of the meetings and whatnot. But if they were truly interested, you would see them there. You would see them in the audience. Why not?
it doesn't mean that they don't watch. If you look on, like, there's actually quite a few, which is kind of refreshing to see. There's quite a few views on those now.
I've never heard not one comment.
I've
come out of-
gotten feedback. I communicate with, my townships. I just don't go to a lot of the meetings.
Yeah.
But I do send them the information. I get feedback from some of them. I talk back and forth with at least two of them all the time. So I think that's fine, but if you want someone to go to a meeting that, especially in this new commissioner's situation, that's a lot of area to cover to, and a lot of time away from home to do this job. I just think they should be compensated for that if they go. I don't think that you should just raise the salary, and then if they don't go, they're still making more money.
That's a good point.
I mean, if they want to be that committed, I think they should be compensated for it.
Well, if you look, okay, so the new one's gonna get 6 townships or 6 meetings. It's got at least 4 here. That's 10. And if he's on
I got 6.
5 committees, okay. Well, then 5,
Attend
Yes,
regularly.
yeah.
everybody.
And then 5 committees on top of that.
We're not talking
Plus
about
you're
a ton
still
of money
working.
here. We're talking about basically the cost of getting there and back and a little bit of extra money.
No,
You know, what is it, $40 or $40 for,
40.
if it's just a short meeting? I mean, it's not a lot of money.
So what, I guess what's your guys' thoughts on keeping, he's got a valid point there, I feel, keeping the pay the same as what we're making right now, but then maybe the compensation if you do attend? That way there is some incentive to attend?
Well, it's just covering the cost of going there and making at least,
Effort?
yeah, just making the effort, and it's not like you're making a whole lot of money in these positions. I mean, this is not about the money. It's just about, making it a little bit more attractive.
Every
so
one
that
of-
other people actually want to be a commissioner. I mean,
Every one of us is talked to. Oh, I can't say every day, but 3 times. I mean, I went this morning. Is it too early this morning for a commissioner question? Oh, go ahead, And it was nothing I could answer, but, all the time. You go any place, I mean, it's no different than a sheriff. Somebody wants to talk to him about some sheriff, law enforcement thing. We get the same thing. I do. People constantly, I mean, how many times we're in having breakfast and somebody comes up and starts talking to us about commissioner stuff? I mean, people don't realize how much time you spend during a month talking to people about commissioner stuff, county stuff.
Phone calls.
Phone calls. Yeah, I get
Emails.
phone calls.
Text messages, phone calls, emails.
Lately, it's been the canvassers been calling me, the one.
So is that, do you think that Tim is an option as far as keeping our compensation the same? I guess what's your thoughts on that? And then maybe just doing the reimbursement for the meetings on top of that?
Yeah, and I would suggest if you're gonna do the reimbursement, the second paragraph below the table, it shows the compensation. It talks about the $40 per diem for attending official standing committee. I would reword that to include the municipal meetings. It's something general like that, so that that's covered, but you're not changing the numbers. It's for accounting. It's still the 40 that you're talking about.
Yep.
But it just would be inserted in that paragraph.
What's your guys' thoughts on that? Keeping that number of the current compensation and then doing that.
I'd like to propose the compensation, actually, because we've added another meeting. Of the month. It's not the same as it was before.
It's an option if you want to take per diem or not. I took per diem the first 6 months, 8 months to be in here. Since then I have not. That's only my choice. That's it. I don't damn anybody for doing it. It's there, they can do it. I haven't, but I brought up about increasing the total compensation. You know, the idea to sit around the table is to add per diems on. I'm not against that, but I just soon just up the talking
But thinking with the redistrict,
$1,000 a year
I agree with Commissioner Scott.
or 2,000.
My only argument, I'm sorry, were you done? I'll wait till you're done. My only argument with that is with the redistricting, us that have 6 of them
Yeah.
versus another individual that has 1.
Yeah, I just dropped one. I had 4, now I got 3.
Okay, so, but that keeps our pay the same.
Yeah.
But yet I'm gonna be spending, I guess, we'll have to equal it out on committees. We're gonna have to actually, Tim's gonna have to put together a Mary, like exactly who. Because that's gonna have to be taken into consideration moving forward after January 1, an individual that has 1 township meeting compared to 2 of other of us that have 6.
Right.
I mean, and then you're gonna have 3. So, I mean, that's all I guess gonna have, if we keep this compensation model that's being proposed.
Well, yeah, I'm all in favor of increasing the compensation level per year, and then putting on the per diem also. I'm not opposed to that.
The per diem for township meetings as well.
Sure. My townships expect me to be there.
Me too.
They really do.
Me too.
Now, and I understand we don't have to, and I have not gone. Usually in the summertime, it's tough for me to go. I've gone this year. Edwards Township held up approving their minutes because my written report wasn't to them last month. So I went home and scanned it and sent it to her. I mean, wow. You held up the whole minutes, township minutes, because my report wasn't there. Wow, I do a written report. I just do it on a computer each month, and then everybody gets one, and I sign it and give it to the clerk.
Oh, nice.
And that way, and then the next commissioners, I hope, do that. But
I don't, I just give a verbal.
well, I mean, to the townships, I'm losing.
Oh.
Anyway, I just do that because it's simple. It's a cheat sheet for me to read. Plus, they get it, what they have. One clerk asked me for it, and I do it for all 4.
And Goodar asked me for it, so I do a written.
And if I can't make it,
That's the only one I do a written.
if I can't make it, I'll email it to them. So they still get it,
That's fair.
and a couple of them probably would rather that anyway. Like you would probably rather me just
Then
send a
talk.
report than show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Short and sweet,
All right.
point. Perfect.
Are we good for today?
But too bad.
Yeah, I guess, so what resolution are we gonna put on there? Or what are we going with? Let's ask around the table. Commissioner Vaughn, what's your? For the person that's replacing you, what
I
is,
was
you're
gonna say-
representing them currently, what is your recommendation?
You are.
I
You got it.
am one of yours. So, do you have a recommendation?
Would you raise the compensation, the annual?
I would do the per diem for the meetings and just leave the wages as.
All right.
Okay,
Sure.
Commissioner Newbecker?
I would go with the administrator's budget for the media or for the salary. And then include the townships and the per diems.
Commissioner Serbrook,
I would agree with Commissioner Newbecker
so you say yes, go with the per diem for the township meetings now?
and the increase. Both.
So you changed on the meetings.
Well, I think
Okay, Commissioner Scott. It was right there. It was right there.
Okay, it's okay. After all this discussion, I agree. I concur with both Brett, raise them both.
So that's three. We'll see how it goes.
What's your opinion?
We get to
You
hear
got
that.
to, you got to hear all of ours.
Come in.
Right, Okay, I'll give it. I'm not. I was totally against getting the compensation for the meetings. My concern again is starting after January 1 is where again, I have 6, that individual's gonna have 6 and someone's gonna have 1. You know, it doesn't cost me a lot. My townships are surrounding. Now, I don't know how far Hill Township is. I don't even know where that is gonna be for me. I agree. It's a lot more time now than what it was when I started however many years back. There is an extra meeting every month and we spend quite a bit of time here.
Committee of the whole, we are.
We're here 2
A
hours.
lot longer than we are at a regular board meeting.
We're here 2 hours. So
Or more.
definitely, I agree. We definitely don't do this for the money by any means. You are on call. Someone contacts you any time of the day. I still am gonna go with no for the compensation for the township meetings. I'm gonna go with the compensation increase. I think instead of the compensation for the township meetings, we're just gonna have to really look at who's doing what. And evaluate and make it more fair on that level. The problem is, I guess, the argument there would be is the individual that has one township meeting is gonna pick up more committees and then can make more money with the per diem on that aspect. So I don't know the right way to do this. I go to my township meetings because I feel like it's my job. I'm their representative. I feel like that is part of my duty. I've done that from the beginning and I will continue to do that.
That's exactly what I said. I feel it's my obligation as a
Correct.
commissioner to do it. And I don't expect to be compensated for that.
So that's
Well,
my,
thank you for your
And
input,
just
your
because.
opinion.
just
for telling
because
us
you say that
where you're coming.
Doesn't mean that they have to do it.
No, I know.
You know, it's just, it's there if they need it.
that gives someone more incentive to attend, because after these new commissioners do go to a couple of these meetings and they do get attacked, which we do.
They may. give
And
them
then you
gun shy.
stop there and it's like, I really don't even have to be here to take this. I mean, it's been brutal.
Paid for.
It's been brutal.
Get paid to get that.
Maybe if you're getting paid, it'll be a little less painful. Anyways, so we'll
Motion
get up for
to
us. No, we have one more. Is there any public comment on the phone? No public comment on the phone?
Really, after all that?
Motion to adjourn at 12:32.
Sport.
We have a motion with support. All in favor, say yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, we have to be over across the street at 1 o'clock.
It's just, gotta get some food.
Do I get per diem then?